Chapter 339. 100 Chi Gate, outside the dense forest. Of course it's inappropriate. Disciple Zhao chuckled as a proud smile flashed across his face. Junior Chi, according to our law enforcement peak's disciples who participated in the Blue Moon Secret Realm trial, Gong Sun Yiming and Yu Haoran have fought side by side several times in the Blue Moon Secret Realm. They have a very good relationship with each other. If my guess is correct, I'm afraid that Gong Sun Yiming is currently being chased by the experts of the Ancient Town sect. The reason is because Yu Haoran directly killed 3 Martial King experts of the Ancient Town sect at the end of the Blue Moon Secret Realm trial, completely angering the upper echelons of the Ancient Town sect. Senior Zhao, if that's the case, then wouldn't we offend the Ancient Town faction by secretly letting Gong Sun Yiming into the sect? After hearing Senior Zhao's speculation, the disciple surnamed Qi said in a panic. Not only would we offend the Ancient Town sect, but we would also offend the sect leader's faction. Disciple Zhao nodded, but there was not a trace of panic on his face. Instead, he spoke in a very domineering manner. However, so what if we offend them? Would they dare to punish our law enforcement peak? Actually, Disciple Zhao had another reason for letting Gong Sun Yiming into the 100 Chi Gate. It was to specifically target the sect leader's faction. This was because after Yu Haoran killed his way into the law enforcement peak alone and emptied the entire law enforcement peak's treasury, not only did it cause the law enforcement peak to suffer heavy losses, but it also weakened the prestige that had been accumulated for hundreds of years. In the past, no matter which faction the law enforcement peak's disciples went to, from the hall masters and deacons to the ordinary disciples, all of them were trembling with fear and treated as if they were treading on thin ice. But now, not to mention the hall masters and law enforcers, even the ordinary disciples did not put them in their eyes. They even ignored the laws that the law enforcement peak had upheld for hundreds of years. The ones who went the most overboard were the disciples of the sect leader's faction. Although the culprit behind this situation was Yu Haoran, they did not dare to direct their resentment at Yu Haoran. They could only think of ways to weaken the strength and prestige of the other factions. Therefore, he planned to use Gong Sun Yiming's special identity to provoke the sect master's faction to besiege him, and then use this to infuriate Yu Haoran. And with Yu Haoran's extremely protective personality, if someone dared to hurt his brothers, it would definitely trigger his killing intent. He would definitely use the strength of the secret transformation technique to cause a huge ruckus. If Yu Haoran could directly kill by Chi Peak, and treat them the same way he treated the law enforcement peak, this would weaken the influence of the Sovereign's faction, and the law enforcement peak could also use this opportunity to restore the prestige of the law enforcement peak. This could be said to be killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Junior brother Chi, I'll give you a mission now. He lowered his head and whispered into the disciple's ear. After hearing senior brother Zhao's plan, Disciple Chi's eyes lit up and he nodded vigorously. Then, he turned around and headed straight for the sect. You too, come here. With a wave of his hand, the other 2 law enforcement peak disciples came to Disciple Zhao's side and listened to his whispered instructions. Yes, Senior Brother Zhao. Hearing Senior Brother Zhao's arrangement, the 2 disciples nodded excitedly and went straight in the direction of the Ancient Town sect. Whether or not we can restore the prestige of the law enforcement peak depends on this battle. Disciple Zhao exclaimed as he raised his head and looked in the direction of the 100 Chi Gate. Then, he used his body movement technique and rushed to the 100 Chi Gate like a gust of wind. The sun rises from the east mountain, and all living things awaken. Yu Haoran, who was sitting cross-legged in the courtyard of the Hidden Moon Pavilion, slowly opened his eyes. Then, he moved his hands and feet and suddenly, a series of cracking sounds came from his body. Seeing that Yu Haoran had stood up from the ground and was moving his hands and feet, Thaling hurriedly asked, Yu Haoran, how do you feel? I feel very powerful. Yu Haoran replied excitedly as he carefully sensed the strength in his clenched fists and the internal organs in his body. Since that's the case, I think you should go to the depths of the forest and find a few 8th rank or 7th rank exotic beasts. Not only can you test your strength and see what realm you have reached, but you can also gradually adapt to your strength after breaking through. Regardless of whether it was a breakthrough in cultivation or a promotion in the grade of the physical body, it was only a breakthrough and increase in strength. If he wanted to convert the sudden increase in strength into strength, he still needed to go through the trials of blood and fire. Okay, I'll go take a look at junior brother Wu. If he also happens to have a breakthrough in cultivation and physical body grade, then I'll bring him along. Nodding his head, Yu Haoran walked out of the Hidden Moon Pavilion, planning to go to the Hidden Dragon Pavilion to find Wu Jingjun. This was because when the trial of the Blue Moon Secret Realm ended, Wu Jingjuan's cultivation and physical body grade had both reached the peak of 9th rank martial warrior. Furthermore, according to his accumulation before the breakthrough, it was almost over. That works too. Hearing that Yu Haoran planned to call Wu Jingjun along, Faling also felt that it was very suitable. After all, Wu Jingjun, who possessed the bloodthirsty physique, would definitely be Yu Haoran's right-hand man in the future. The stronger he was, the more help he would be to Yu Haoran. However, just as Yu Haoran was about to leave the Hidden Moon Pavilion and head straight for the Hidden Dragon Pavilion, a red sword-shaped firework suddenly shot up from the direction of the trial peak. Not good, looks like junior brother Gongsun is in trouble. After seeing the red sword-shaped firework, Yu Haoran's expression changed. He immediately changed his direction and used his footwork martial skill to head straight for the trial peak. When the trial of the Blue Moon Secret Realm was about to end and he persuaded Du Yuan to temporarily give up on leaving the secret realm, Yu Haoran used his free time to use a special material from the red rocks to refine 7 warning fireworks. His goal was to give them to the people closest to him so that when they were in danger, they would be able to send out a distress signal in time, making it easier for him to save them. At that time, he had refined a total of 7 special fireworks that didn't require any origin energy and only needed to be crushed to ignite them. The 7 fireworks were given to Wu Jingjun, Lin Mengyao, Kong Yunga, Palace, Du Yuan, and the Red Redwood Boar. He also secretly stuffed one into Gong Sun Yiming's hand when they parted at the entrance of the secret realm. Palace and Du Yuan were both in the Blue Moon Secret Realm. When the Red Redwood Boar left the Blue Moon Secret Realm, it chose a direction that was at least tens of thousands of kilometers away from him. Even if they ignited the firework as a warning, he probably wouldn't be able to see it. Wu Jingjun was in the Veiled Dragon Pavilion, Lin Mengyao was in the Sunset Peak, and Kong Yunga was in the Achievement Hall. The location where they ignited the firework would not appear in the direction of the trial peak. Therefore, it could only be that Gong Sun Yiming, who was planning to seek refuge with him, would choose to ignite the warning firework when he encountered a crisis that he couldn't deal with in order to seek help from him. 100 Qi Gate below the trial peak. Gong Sun Yiming, you better obediently surrender. Only then can I ask the ancient town sect leader, Zhao, to let you and your sister live. Zhao Zhong, who came from a sect and had a cultivation of 9th grade martial master, threatened with a gloomy expression. Zhao Zhong, like Zhao Zong, was a relative of the sect leader Zhao Ji. However, the difference between Zhao Zhong and Zhao Zong was that Zhao Zhong's talent and potential were extremely outstanding. He had the aptitude of an advanced martial king and was already an early 9th grade martial master at the age of 19. He was deeply valued by Zhao Ji. More importantly, the ancient town sect leader Zhao Ji was his second uncle. The ancient town sect leader Zhao Ji had no children. In the future, the ancient town sect leader position would very likely be Zhao Zhong. Chapter 340. 100 Qi Gate, at the bottom of the training peak. Senior brother Zhao, it's not impossible for us to surrender, but we have to wait for Yu Shixiang to come. Because this time, we came to the 100 Qi Gate with the purpose of meeting Yu Shixiang. Facing Zhao Zhong's threat, Gong Sun Yiming felt very nervous. Because of his position in the ancient town sect, he had heard of Zhao Zhong's deeds more than once and knew that he was a ruthless person. Now that he had been blocked by him, it was impossible to escape. Therefore, Gong Sun Yiming could only hope that Yu Haoran would appear in time. Fortunately, he had just sent out a signal for help. Yu Haoran, who does he think he is? Hearing Gong Sun Yiming mention Yu Haoran, Zhao Zhong immediately ridiculed with disdain. If he dares to interfere in today's matter, I will make him regret entering the 100 Qi Gate and become a disciple of the 100 Qi Gate. Surnamed Zhao, whether I, Yu Haoran, am a person or not is not something that a mere martial master like you can decide. However, I know that you, Zhao Zhong, are a person who is not a person. Just as Zhao Zhong's disdainful ridicule ended, an obviously humiliating and sarcastic voice sounded at the same time. Accompanied by the sarcastic voice, a figure rushed in front of Gong Sun Yiming like lightning. Zhao Zhong, aren't you afraid that the wind will cut your tongue? Not to mention a mere disciple like you, even if Zhao Ji stood in front of me, he wouldn't dare to say those words. Yu Haoran coldly looked at Zhao Zhong and retorted with incomparable strength. Yu Haoran! Seeing Yu Haoran suddenly standing in front of Gong Sun Yiming, Zhao Zhong gritted his teeth and said. Then, he took a deep breath, adjusted his anger, and said with a disdainful expression. Yu Haoran, I wasn't looking down on you just now. Yu Haoran, if you didn't have the deterrence of the transformation secret technique, you would have been able to make the experts of the various sects fear you. Without the assistance of the secret realm of transformation, I'm afraid that you, Yu Haoran, would just be an outer disciple of the 100 Qi Gate that no one would recognize. Even if you died, no one would know. Zhao Zhong, it's such an obvious provocation, but you said it with such confidence. This makes me wonder if there's something wrong with your intelligence, or if your parents were very casual when they raised you. Zhao Zhong's scheme was too obvious, and everyone present could see it. However, no one expected that Yu Haoran would use Zhao Zhong's obvious scheme to insult him. Yu Haoran, you're courting death. There was something wrong with his intelligence, and his parents were too casual when they raised him. Yu Haoran's humiliation completely infuriated Zhao Zhong. He wanted nothing more than to tear Yu Haoran in half immediately. However, when he thought that Yu Haoran could transform into a giant monkey and had the strength of a martial emperor, he could only grit his teeth and curse. He didn't dare to take a step forward. Seeing that Zhao Zhong only knew how to curse but didn't dare to step forward, Yu Haoran sneered disdainfully. Then, he turned around and looked at Gong Sun Yiming. Junior brother Gong Sun, I've made you suffer. Yu Haoran said apologetically. Not only was Gong Sun Yiming in a very sorry state, but his long robe, which he didn't have the chance to change, was also stained with blood. Yu Haoran knew that he must have suffered a lot and suffered a lot on the way from the ancient town sect to the 100 Qi Gate. A large part of the reason for the pain and suffering he had suffered was likely because he had killed the 3 martial king experts of the ancient town faction. To be able to successfully bring my sister to see you Shixiang, it's worth it no matter how much pain and tiredness I suffered. Gong Sun Yiming responded to Yu Haoran's concern with a relaxed expression. Then, he reached out and pulled Gong Sun Yiming, who was behind him, in front of him and introduced her to Yu Haoran. Yu Shixiang, this is my sister, Gong Sun Yiming. Today is her 16th birthday. Gong Sun Yiming greets Yu Shixiang. On the way, Gong Sun Yiming not only explained why he wanted to leave the ancient town sect, but also praised Yu Haoran's excellence and brilliance. Therefore, Gong Sun Yiming had long wanted to see what kind of person the person was that her elder brother admired so much. When she saw Yu Haoran for the first time, Gong Sun Yiming was slightly disappointed. Because in terms of appearance, Yu Haoran was the kind of person who had an extremely ordinary appearance. If he was thrown into a crowd, he would definitely not attract attention. But in the second glance, Gong Sun Yiming discovered that Yu Haoran was extraordinary. He exuded a kind of confidence that everything was under his control. And this kind of confidence in absolute control was very attractive to girls. And the third glance was what really moved Gongsun Yuding. That was Yu Haoran's eyes, which constantly revealed a trace of sadness. And this kind of sad eyes, to a young girl like her who had not experienced much of the world, had a fatal attraction. Junior sister Gongsun, hello. Nodding his head, Yu Haoran responded with a smile. Although being stared at by Gongsun Yuding made his heart feel a little uncomfortable, but considering that Gongsun Yuding was just a little girl who had just reached adulthood and did as she pleased, Yu Haoran suddenly felt a lot more relieved. Junior brother Gongsun, although you have been to the 100 Qi Gate before, you definitely have not been to Qingyun Peak. Now, I will take you to Qingyun Peak to have a look. After greeting Gongsun Yuding, Yu Haoran invited Gongsun Yiming and his sister to Qingyun Peak to familiarize themselves with the place where they would live in the future. Sorry to disturb you, Shixiang. After being polite, Gongsun Yiming followed behind Yu Haoran and planned to leave the trial peak. Yu Haoran, aren't you looking down on me too much? Seeing that Yu Haoran planned to take the Gongsun siblings away after greeting them, Zhao Zhong's face was gloomy as he questioned. Turning his head to look at Zhao Zhong, Yu Haoran said in an incomparably domineering manner, "Surname Zhao, I still say the same thing. Don't think too highly of yourself. In the 100 Qi Gate, as long as you don't violate the 3 sect rules, I, Yu Haoran, can do whatever I want. Don't talk about you, even if Zhao Ji was standing in front of me, I would do whatever I want. I would do whatever I want." Yu Haoran's incomparably domineering words suddenly brought a completely different feeling to everyone present. For Zhao Zhong, Yu Haoran's words just now completely deviated from the orthodoxy and disgraced the sect. According to the sect rules of the sect, at the very least, one's cultivation would be abolished and he would be tortured to death by 1,000 cuts before he could be sent on his way. For Gongsun Yiming, Yu Haoran's incomparably domineering words just now made his blood boil. This kind of attitude, this kind of behavior, this kind of domineering attitude, this was the backbone that disciples with top talent and potential should have. At the same time, he also felt extremely fortunate that he had left the ancient town sect, joined the 100 Qi Gate, and became a disciple of Qingyun Peak. He was fortunate that Yu Haoran had taken a fancy to him and was willing to accept him. And for Gongsun Yuding, who had just reached adulthood and was still in a hazy state towards the opposite sex, her eyes flashed as she looked at Yu Haoran, and some messy thoughts appeared in her mind. Yu Haoran, don't tell me you think that no one in the 100 Qi Gate can deal with you just by relying on the secret method of transformation. Just as Zhao Zhong was unable to refute or stop Yu Haoran's incomparably domineering demonstration, a questioning voice suddenly came from the depths of the 100 Qi Gate. Chapter 341. 100 Qi Gate at the foot of the training peak. Zhao Xinyu, I haven't gone to find trouble with you yet. I didn't expect you to deliver yourself to me. Looking at Zhao Xinyu, who was standing in front of Zhao Zhong, the corners of Yu Haoran's mouth curled up slightly as he threatened. Is that so? Zhao Xinyu was not afraid of Yu Haoran's threat. He only sneered disdainfully. Then, he turned to Zhao Zhong and asked, Brother Zhong, if I have a way to prevent Yu Haoran from using the secret transformation technique, do you have the confidence to capture him? Xinyu, are you looking down on your brother Zhong by saying that? Without the secret transformation technique, Yu Haoran's cultivation was at most at the peak of the 9th grade martial warrior realm. In Zhao Zhong's eyes, an opponent with such strength was like an ant. If he wanted to step on, pinch, stomp, slap, die, or live, it was all up to him. Therefore, in the face of Zhao Xinyu's questioning, he was very dissatisfied. Brother Zhong, it's not that I'm looking down on you, but the magic tool that restricts Yu Haoran's secret transformation technique can only be used once. If you have 100% confidence in capturing him, then I'm willing to give up this precious magic tool and lend you a hand. If you don't have 100% confidence, then we'll admit defeat today, and let Yu Haoran take away Gong's son Yiming and his sister. In the future, we'll find a suitable opportunity. In the face of Zhao Zhong's dissatisfaction, Zhao Xinyu hurriedly explained and asked in a cautious tone. However, if one looked closely at Zhao Xinyu's eyes, they would see a trace of coldness flashing through his eyes from time to time. Zhao Xinyu, I, Zhao Zhong, swear by the laws of heaven. If you, Zhao Xinyu, can restrict Yu Haoran from using the secret transformation technique, then I, Zhao Zhong, can capture Yu Haoran alive. Otherwise, my blood will splatter on the spot and my soul will scatter. In the face of Zhao Xinyu's distrust, Zhao Zhong was completely enraged. He raised his left hand and swore by the laws of heaven, the highest form of oath in the Tianxian continent. Brother Zhong, I just want to confirm if the plan is feasible. Why do you have to swear such a serious oath? Reaching out to press down Zhao Zhong's raised left hand, Zhao Xinyu pretended to be very angry as he complained. However, his heart at this moment, he was overjoyed. Although he and Zhao Zhong were both direct descendants of the Zhao clan, and Zhao Zhong's special relationship with the ancient town sect master would not threaten his chances of ascending to the top in the future, in Zhao Xinyu's heart, eliminating Yu Haoran was the most important thing in his life at this moment. As long as he could eliminate Yu Haoran, not to mention sacrificing a single Zhao Zhong, even if he had to sacrifice the entire Zhao clan, he, Zhao Xinyu, would not even frown. Xinyu, now that I have finished swearing, I wonder when you will use the artifact that restricts Yu Haoran's transformation? Ignoring Zhao Xinyu's complaints, Zhao Zhong asked coldly. Although Zhao Zhong couldn't completely guess Zhao Xinyu's thoughts, he could also feel that the repeated questioning just now was a more subtle way of goading him. Even though he clearly knew that it was a provocation, Zhao Zhong still dared to swear on the Heavenly Way's rules that he absolutely could not violate. This was because he had absolute confidence in his own strength. Furthermore, he also wanted to use today's magnificent feat of capturing Yu Haoran to expand his influence in the sect. In the future, he would have the ability and opportunity to compete for the position of the 100 Qi Gates sect master, which was even stronger, more powerful, and more influential. Big Brother Zhong, once I have made the appropriate arrangements, I will immediately use that artifact, Zhao Xinyu said as he patted Zhao Zhong's shoulder. Then, he turned around and looked at Yu Haoran as he nodded to the 20 or so martial master experts that he had brought with him. Yu Haoran did not stop this. He only calmly looked at Zhao Xinyu to see what he wanted to do. Yu Haoran, I will give you two choices now, Zhao Xinyu said proudly after the 20 or so martial master experts that he had brought with him blocked all the exit. Speak, Yu Haoran said with a relaxed expression, as if he was watching a show. The first choice is to obediently kneel in front of me and kowtow to me 3 times. If you do, I will consider sparing your life. After giving the first choice, Zhao Xinyu stared closely at Yu Haoran. He wanted to know how Yu Haoran would react after hearing his choice. Unfortunately, Yu Haoran's expression did not change in the slightest, let alone become angry. This made Zhao Xinyu very disappointed. Then, he said the second choice with some annoyance. The second choice is for Big Brother Zhong to personally take action. I'm afraid that the process and outcome will not be very comfortable. Are you done talking? After Zhao Xinyu gave the second choice, Yu Haoran waited for a little more than 10 seconds. When he realized that Zhao Xinyu had no intention of continuing, he deliberately reminded him. Yu Haoran, give me your choice. Yu Haoran's calm expression made Zhao Xinyu very unhappy. He immediately took out a red ball from his sleeve and asked coldly. Zhao Xinyu, why don't I give you 2 choices right now? Glancing at the red ball that Zhao Xinyu had just taken out, a trace of familiarity welled up in his heart. He seemed to have seen this red ball somewhere in his previous life. However, he couldn't recall it in a short period of time. He could only stall for time while carefully recalling it. Yu Haoran, it seems like you have made your choice. Seeing Yu Haoran staring at the red ball in his hand, Zhao Xinyu knew that he was already suspicious. In order to prevent Yu Haoran from using the secret transformation technique in advance and affecting his meticulous plan, Zhao Xinyu decided to directly use the red ball that could restrict the secret transformation technique. Zhao Xinyu cut his finger and forced out a few drops of blood onto the red ball. Then, the red ball in his hand directly flew into the air. When the few drops of blood completely merged with the red ball self-exploded. Countless red powder finally formed a red halo with a diameter of 100 meters and enveloped everyone present. Gold-devouring beetles! Gold-devouring beetles! After the red halo formed by the self-explosion of the red ball enveloped everyone, Yu Haoran and Thaling, who was in his sea of consciousness, cried out involuntarily at the same time. How is this possible? How can Zhao Xinyu have the gold-devouring beetles, a spiritual insect that has been lost for hundreds of thousands of years? After scanning the red halo formed by the red ball with his divine sense, Thaling finally determined that his judgment was correct. He was even more shocked and involuntarily muttered to himself. Lost for hundreds of thousands of years. Originally, he was still shocked that Zhao Xinyu actually had the gold-devouring beetles. However, after hearing Thaling's involuntary muttering, Yu Haoran immediately asked in confusion. Nodding his head, Thaling replied, "That's right. The gold-devouring beetles are between exotic beasts and spiritual beasts. They are a special kind of life form that lives by devouring the blood of living creatures. The gold-devouring beetles can ignore any defenses of living creatures. Even the defenses formed by the power of laws cannot stop them from directly entering a living creature's body and instantly devouring all the blood in the living creature's body. Because the blood of living creatures contains 1/3 of their cultivation, the gold-devouring beetles that devour all the blood can possess 1/3 of their target's cultivation for a short period of time." At this point, Thaling revealed a trace of lingering fear as he spoke. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, a large number of gold-devouring beetles suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Because the gold-devouring beetles live on fresh blood, they will automatically die if they don't consume fresh blood. This caused them to crazily pursue the blood of living creatures. Chapter 342. 100 Qi Gate Trial Peak. Yu Haoran, you must know that hundreds of thousands of years ago, the living environment of the profound sky continent was much better than it is now. The population was at least a dozen times greater than it is now. Speaking of this, Ta Lingran suddenly shouted with great agitation. A quarter of the population, that's tens of billions. If we include the wild beasts and exotic beasts that had their blood sucked dry, the number would definitely exceed 100 billion. Hearing Thaling say that the gold-devouring beetles had sucked dry the blood of hundreds of billions of living beings in just half a year, almost turning the profound sky continent into a living hell, Yu Haoran could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. This was because he did not know that the gold-devouring beetles, which seemed to have many uses and were not dangerous at all, actually possessed such terrifying methods and had once caused such a painful price. Ignoring Yu Haoran's shock, Thaling continued. Faced with the threat of extinction, the strongest human and exotic beasts of the profound sky continent joined forces to fight against the gold-devouring beetles. After nearly 100 years, the gold-devouring beetles were finally defeated. In order to prevent the gold-devouring beetles from rising from the ashes, all the experts of the profound sky continent at that time jointly announced an extermination plan. That was to absolutely not allow a single gold-devouring beetle to exist in the profound sky continent. Even their corpses had to be destroyed. Therefore, after 1,000 years of carpet searching, all the gold-devouring beetles were finally exterminated, and the profound sky continent was finally restored to its former glory. His brows furrowed slightly, but quickly relaxed. This was because Thaling had just said that hundreds of thousands of years ago, the gold-devouring beetles had been completely exterminated. Not a single gold-devouring beetle could be found in the entire profound sky continent, not even their corpses. However, Yuhauran knew very well that not only had the gold-devouring beetles not been completely exterminated, but they had also been cultivated on a large scale, reaching a certain scale. This was because in his previous life, he had once seen living gold-devouring beetles in a certain fallen family clan. There were even tens of thousands of them. Moreover, he received a gift from the clan before he left. He received 3 one-time use magic tools refined from the corpses of the gold-devouring beetles and 10 living gold-devouring beetles. Actually, when the red ball in Zhao Sinyu's hand exploded after fusing with Zhao Sinyu's blood, Yuhauran already knew the origin of the red ball in his hand. He also knew why Zhao Sinyu had ordered his subordinates to block off all possible escape routes. Because the gold-devouring beetles could devour the blood of living creatures, they could use corpses to refine single-use magic tools that restricted bloodlines. Within the red circle of light formed by the gold-devouring beetles, as long as it was a constitution related to blood, martial skills, and mental cultivation methods, nothing could be used. This included special constitutions and transformation secret technique. That was because the transfiguration secret technique used the blood essence of mutated beasts. Through the special activation and operation of the transfiguration secret technique, the transfiguration secret technique would give the transfiguration secret technique the strength of the mutated beast. The most basic principle was to make full use of the blood essence of exotic beasts, which happened to be within the limits of the gold-devouring beetle's abilities. Yuhauran, although the gold-devouring beetles Zhao Sinyu used were only magic tools refined from the corpses of dead gold-devouring beetles, due to their special constitutions, their corpses can only be preserved for a short period of time. Even magic tools made from their corpses can't be preserved for more than 10 years. In other words, Zhao Sinyu, or the person who gave him the magic tool for the gold-devouring beetles, definitely knew of their existence. Therefore, you must capture Zhao Sinyu alive and interrogate him about the mastermind behind the gold-devouring beetles. Then, think of a way to unite the experts of the profound sky continent and exterminate the gold-devouring beetles together, Thaling suggested with great worry. I'll try my best. In response, Yuhauran's reply was very casual. This was because after hundreds of thousands of years of research, not only was that fallen family able to raise gold-devouring beetles, they were also able to control their bloodthirsty and berserk side. It was completely possible for them to not cause any harm to the beings of the profound sky continent. Furthermore, other than being able to refine magic tools that restricted bloodlines, the gold-devouring beetles could also be used to refine top-notch pills that could help martial saints increase the power of their bloodlines. How could they be destroyed so easily? Therefore, not only was Yuhauran's reply very casual, he also didn't plan on telling Thaling about the existence of the gold-devouring beetles for the time being. Although Thaling was very dissatisfied with Yuhauran's casual attitude, he knew that Yuhauran, who hadn't experienced the terror of the gold-devouring beetles, didn't understand the dangers of the gold-devouring beetles. Therefore, Thaling secretly transferred a trace of his divine sense to Zhao Sinyu's body, hoping to find the mastermind behind the gold-devouring beetles through Zhao Sinyu. Yuhauran, now that you can't use the secret transformation technique, how are you going to deal with Brother Zhong, who is a 9th-grade martial master? After the red sphere formed a red circle of light that completely enveloped Yuhauran and the others, Zhao Sinyu waited for a while, hoping to see Yuhauran's panicked expression. Unfortunately, other than the initial shock, Yuhauran's expression didn't change at all. This made Zhao Sinyu deeply disappointed, and he could only let Zhao Zhong take action. Yuhauran, I've already said it. Zhao Zhong walked past Zhao Sinyu and approached Yuhauran step by step. He shook his head and stretched his arms and legs as he spoke with a sinister smile. If you don't have the intimidation of the secret transformation technique, how could you Howren, be able to make the experts of the various sects fear you? If you don't have the assistance of the secret transformation technique, you Howren, are just an ordinary disciple that no one knows about. Even if you die, no one will know about it. Now, it's time to verify whether what I said was true or not. Facing the slowly approaching Zhao Zhong, who spoke with an unusually arrogant tone, Yu Haoren's expression didn't change in the slightest. He turned his head and gestured to Gong's son Yiming and his sister, who had serious expressions. You guys stay back for now. Yu Shixiang, if you can't do it, it's best to inform the senior brothers of Qingyun Peak. Without the assistance of the secret transformation technique, although Yu Haoren wasn't as weak as Zhao Zhong had said, he was definitely not a match for Zhao Zhong, who was a 9th-grade martial master. Therefore, Gong's son Yiming hurriedly reminded him. A mere Zhao Zhong isn't worth the trouble of senior brothers. Shaking his head with a smile, Yu Haoren turned his head and stepped forward to meet Zhao Zhong. At the same time, he activated the Yuan Li in his dantian and the strength of his physical body. No wonder you didn't panic at all after losing the assistance of the secret transformation technique. Turns out that your cultivation has already broken through to the martial master realm. Seeing Yu Haoren activate his Yuan Li and expose his cultivation as a martial master, Zhao Zhong was stunned for a moment. However, his expression was still filled with disdain as he mocked. So what if your cultivation has broken through to the martial master realm? With your talent and potential, you're at most a first-grade martial master. With this level of cultivation and strength, I can still crush you to death with one hand. Facing Yu Haoren exposing his cultivation as a martial master, although Zhao Zhong didn't feel much, to Zhao Xinyu, the shock in his heart was like a stormy sea. More than 2 months ago, he and Yu Haoren had participated in the talent and potential test of the 100 Qi Gates disciples at the same time. At that time, Zhao Xinyu's cultivation was at the peak of the 9th-grade martial disciple. He had the talent and potential of a peak martial king. Yu Haoren was also at the peak of the 9th-grade martial disciple. His talent and potential were slightly better than his, close to the early stage of the martial saint realm. Chapter 343. 100 Qi Gate Training Peak. Originally, Zhao Xinyu should have had the advantage in terms of talent and potential, as well as the advantage in cultivation resources. But in reality, yesterday, when he broke through to the 4th-grade martial warrior realm, he was praised by his father and the clan elders as an exceptional genius rarely seen in 100 years. On the other hand, Yu Haoren was different. They had the same starting point and the same aptitude. However, the other party had already broken through to the martial master realm. There was an entire realm and 6 small realms between them. This caused Zhao Xinyu to recall his father's evaluation of him as an exceptional genius rarely seen in 100 years. He immediately blushed and felt a sense of humiliation in his heart. Zhao Zhong, if the cultivation of a first-grade martial master is not enough, then what about the cultivation of a second-grade martial master? Faced with Zhao Zhong's disdainful mockery, Yu Haoren did not get angry at all. He smiled as he took his second step. As he took his first step, Yu Haoren's cultivation aura directly rose to that of a second-grade martial master. In my eyes, a second-grade martial master is the same as a first-grade martial master. I can still kill you with one slap. Although Zhao Zhong was extremely shocked that Haoren was able to break through to Grade 2 Martial Master in one fell swoop after completing his training in the Blue Moon Secret Realm, it was not as if Zhao Zhong had never seen such a genius before. Furthermore, he had relied on his deep accumulation to almost break through to the second-grade Martial Master. Therefore, his attitude was still very arrogant as he spoke. Zhao Zhong, if the cultivation of a second-grade martial master is not enough, then what about the cultivation of a third-grade martial master? Yu Haoran chuckled when he saw that Zhao Zhong's heart was still not shaken even after he revealed his cultivation as a second-grade martial master. Then, he took his third step. At the same time, his body emitted the aura of a third-grade martial master. How is this possible? Seeing that Yu Haoran's cultivation aura had reached the third-grade martial master, Zhao Zhong was no longer surprised, but shocked. Through the accumulation of the martial warrior realm, and breaking through to the martial master realm, one's cultivation had reached the third grade of martial master. This kind of talent, potential, comprehension, and perseverance could only be achieved by a truly exceptional genius. There were only 3 truly peerless geniuses in the entire 100 Qi Gate. Although the 3 of them were about the same age as them, they had already occupied high positions in the 100 Qi Gate and enjoyed treatment that far exceeded the elite disciples like them. In fact, Zhao Zhong was not the only one who was shocked. Gong's son Yiming, who was behind Yu Haoran, also looked at him in shock. Through the accumulation of the martial warrior realm, when breaking through to the martial master realm, it was very normal to raise one's cultivation to grade 1 or grade 2 martial master. Gong's son Yiming also believed that by relying on his own talent and potential, as well as the deep accumulation of experience in the Blue Moon secret realm, he would be able to break through to the martial master realm and raise his cultivation to grade 2 martial master in one go. With the help of the top-notch spiritual medicine and spiritual fruit he had harvested in the Blue Moon secret realm, he had directly raised his cultivation to the peak of second-grade martial master. However, a third-grade martial master, Gong's son Yiming knew that it was impossible for him to do so. This was because to do so, one needed even more outstanding talent and potential, even deeper accumulation of experience in the realm, as well as a state of mind that was comparable to one's cultivation. Gong's son Yiming did not possess any of these 3 requirements at the moment. As for Gong's son Yuding, although she had yet to come into contact with cultivation, she did not understand the meaning of Yu Haoran directly revealing his third-grade martial master cultivation. However, from the shocked expressions of everyone present, she knew that Yu Haoran had just done something that shocked everyone. Therefore, her originally worried expression instantly turned into one of joy. However, to Zhao Xinyu, when faced with Yu Haoran directly revealing his third-grade martial master cultivation, his expression was so gloomy that it could almost drip water. Not enough. Although Zhao Zhong's heart was in a perilous situation due to Yu Haoran directly breaking through to the third-grade martial master realm, his cultivation was far superior to Yu Haoran's by 6 small realms. Thus, he continued to speak with disdain. A mere third-grade martial master is still not a match for a single palm from me, Zhao Zhong. Zhao Zhong, if a third-grade martial master cultivation is not enough, then what about a 4th-grade martial master cultivation? Faced with the stubborn Zhao Zhong, Yu Haoran asked with a smile on his face as he took his 4th step. Impossible. How can this be? Damn it. Faced with Yu Haoran's exposed 4th-grade martial master cultivation, Zhao Zhong, Gong's son Yiming, and Zhao Xinyu all involuntarily cried out at the same time. To be able to raise one's cultivation by 4 small realms while breaking through to the martial master realm, this was already an ability that could not be achieved by a peerless genius. Unless Yu Haoran's aptitude had already reached the demonic level and he had an extremely strong mental state, it was absolutely impossible for him to break through 4 small realms. In a small forest not far from the trial peak, there were dozens of people dressed in the Enforcer Peak's uniform. Their auras were restrained, and it was obvious that they were elite disciples who had experienced hundreds of battles. Among them was the disciple surnamed Zhao, who had used a scheme to incite a conflict between Yu Haoran and the sect master's faction, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. In the middle of these disciples, there was a peak 7th-grade martial ancestor realm expert who could use the power of his divine sense. He used his divine sense to monitor the conflict that was occurring below the trial peak while explaining the entire process in detail. When Yu Haoran revealed his first-grade martial master cultivation, none of the dozens of Enforcer Peak disciples present were shocked. After all, when Yu Haoran had killed his way to the Enforcer Peak alone, he had relied on a secret transformation technique to transform into a giant monkey and fight the Peak Master alone. The entire process was witnessed by these Enforcer Peak disciples. To be able to adapt to the energy of the rank 5 Vajra monkey's blood essence, and to be able to use the power of a martial king, it was enough to show that Yu Haoran's control over his strength and the tempering of his mental state had already reached a very high level. With such a high tempering of his mental state, as long as he had sufficient energy to raise his cultivation, and then relied on the experience of blood and fire in the Blue Moon's secret realm as well as his deep accumulation, it was not impossible for him to break through to the Martial Master realm in a short period of time. When the Martial Ancestor realm expert mentioned that Yu Haoran had revealed his second-grade Martial Master cultivation, the people present were not surprised in the slightest. That was because to them, if Yu Haoran was not able to break through one or two small realms when breaking through to the Martial Master realm, they would be shocked. When the Martial Ancestor realm expert mentioned that Yu Haoran had revealed his third-grade Martial Master cultivation, although the people present were shocked, it was still within the range of what they could accept. However, when Yu Haoran revealed his fourth-grade Martial Master cultivation, the dozens of Enforcer Peak disciples present all had a change in expression. Everyone's gazes were directed towards Disciple Zhao, who was standing at the front of the crowd and was in charge of this mission. Continue observing. Disciple Zhao forcefully suppressed the shock in his heart and pondered for 3 seconds before instructing in a low voice. Breaking through 4 small realms in one go and reaching the 4th-grade Martial Master realm with 16 small realms in between, this kind of aptitude was completely the performance of a demon-level disciple. Scheming against Yu Haoran, who had a demon-level aptitude, was an extremely risky move for the Enforcer Peak. If Yu Haoran were to see through this, it would probably arouse his strong disgust and intensify the conflict between him and the Enforcer Peak. This was also the main reason why the gazes of the disciples present were directed towards Disciple Zhao. Chapter 344. 100 Qi Gate Trial Peak. Yu Haoran, I originally only wanted to capture you alive today and hand you over to Cousin Sinew. However, for me and for the future of the Gate Master's faction, I can only kill you today. After taking 10 deep breaths, Zhao Zhong barely suppressed the shock in his heart and spoke with killing intent in his heart. Then, he turned his head to look at Zhao Sinew and directly ordered. Sinew, capturing alive includes living and corpse. Right now, I can only follow the oath of the Heavenly Tao and capture a corpse for you. Brother Zhong, it's better to be safe than sorry. I support your idea with both hands. Zhao Sinew, who had also been frightened by Yu Haoran's exposed 4th-grade Martial Master cultivation, hurriedly nodded in agreement when he heard Zhao Zhong's order. Capturing alive meant that Yu Haoran could still live for a period of time. Now that Yu Haoran had exposed his monstrous aptitude, he would definitely attract the attention of the various factions in the sect, especially those factions that didn't agree with the Gate Master's faction, as well as the group of elders that could decide the fate of the 100 Qi Gate. If these people took a fancy to Yu Haoran's monstrous aptitude and saved him, it wouldn't take long for the Gate Master's faction to be completely suppressed. In the future, the Zhao clan would very likely lose their position as the Gate Master's faction. Therefore, Zhao Sinew didn't dare to keep Yu Haoran alive and give him a chance to turn the tables. Zhao Zhong, if a 4th-grade Martial Master can still make you so arrogant and egotistical, then I wonder if a 5th-grade Martial Master can make you put away your so-called arrogance. Faced with Zhao Zhong's words, Yu Haoran's expression didn't change in the slightest. He still had a smile on his face as he took a step forward with his left foot. As he questioned in a loud voice, his left foot landed heavily on the ground. SSSS. When Yu Haoran revealed his cultivation as a mid-fifth grade martial master, everyone present, as well as those in the distant forest, gasped at the same time. Breaking through to grade 5 martial master was no longer something that could be achieved through talent, potential, comprehension, perseverance, accumulation of experience, or mental state. This was a completely heaven-defying achievement. To Zhao Zhong, he had never heard of anyone who could directly raise their cultivation by 5 small realms when breaking through to the martial master realm. Even the most outstanding demonic geniuses of the 7 top sects could not do this. As for the disciple surnamed Zhao and the martial ancestor realm experts in the forest, after Yu Haoran exposed his cultivation as a grade 5 martial master, they felt incomparably panicked. At the same time, they were also considering whether or not to cancel their plan of killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Martial nephew Zhao, what do you think we should do? The martial ancestor realm expert turned his head to look at the disciple surnamed Zhao and asked. If Yu Haoran had only revealed his demonic talent and they continued with their original plan, although it would be somewhat risky, as long as they did it flawlessly and considered the threat of the Gate Master's faction, Yu Haoran might not be overly calculative with the law enforcement peak. However, at this moment, Yu Haoran revealed his cultivation as a mid-5th grade martial master. This meant that it was very likely that he had a heaven-defying talent that surpassed the demonic talent level. A genius like this could already ignore the threat of any faction in the 100 Qi Gate. Even if his current strength wasn't enough to threaten powerful factions like the Gate Master and the Law Enforcement Peak, with the speed of his cultivation, it would probably only take a few years for him to completely suppress all the factions in the 100 Qi Gate with his own strength. At this moment, they could either borrow the power of Zhao Zhong's weapon that could restrict his transformation and cooperate with Zhao Zhong to kill Yu Haoran. This would not only be able to avenge the humiliation that the law enforcement peak had suffered previously, but also prevent future troubles. Or they could think of a way to resolve the conflict with Yu Haoran and coexist peacefully. After thinking deeply for a few seconds, the disciple surnamed Zhao's originally worried expression immediately became firm and he indicated for everyone to act according to the original plan. However, as he turned his head to look in the direction of Qingyun Peak, the disciple surnamed Zhao instructed the martial ancestor realm expert at the same time. If Yu Haoran's life is in danger, I'll have to trouble Martial Uncle Ma to lend a hand. It seems that you've already thought it through. Not only would they act according to the original plan, but they would also have to lend a hand when Yu Haoran was in danger. After hearing the disciple surnamed Zhao's instructions, the martial ancestor realm expert spoke with great relief. That's right. The disciple surnamed Zhao nodded heavily and said, All right, I'll do my best to protect Yu Haoran's safety. The martial ancestor Ma nodded. Then, his spiritual sense quietly penetrated the light shield formed by the red ball and quietly landed on Yu Haoran's body. In Yu Haoran's sea of consciousness, Thaling could not help but frown when he saw the spiritual sense quietly land on Yu Haoran's body. However, he did not expel the spiritual sense and allowed it to stay on Yu Haoran's body. This was because not only did the spiritual sense not have the slightest bit of malice, it even had an aura of protecting Yu Haoran at all times. Otherwise, Thaling would not just expel it, he would probably use this spiritual sense to directly destroy the owner of this spiritual sense. Yu Haoran, it seems that even if I have to sacrifice my life today, I'll have to kill you at the bottom of the training peak. Otherwise, in less than 10 years, even if you don't use the secret transformation technique, I'm afraid that no one in the entire 100 Qi Gate will be able to suppress you. As an elite disciple under the Gate Master, Zhao Zhong knew that the greater one's talent and potential, the greater one's ability to surpass oneself. To be able to raise one's cultivation level in one fell swoop when breaking through to the martial master realm, as a grade 5 martial master, This meant that Yu Haoran was very likely to possess strength that was not inferior to his own. Therefore, Zhao Zhong did not use the method of slowly approaching in hopes that Yu Haoran would be unable to withstand the pressure of his aura and directly kneel down to beg for mercy. Instead, he directly launched an attack and used all of his strength from the start. Zhao Zhong, don't tell me you think that I, Yu Haoran, only have the strength of cultivation. Softly muttering to himself, Yu Haoran directly exploded with the dual aura of his physical body and cultivation, causing the aura he emitted to instantly surpass that of a Grade 9 martial master, finally stopping at the middle Grade 9 martial master. However, Yu Haoran was very clear in his heart that the middle Grade 9 martial master was not the limit of his strength. The reason was that he had only consolidated his cultivation after breaking through and had not yet familiarized himself with the power after breaking through. After completely adapting and familiarizing himself with the power after breaking through, his strength might directly reach the peak of Grade 9 martial master. Moon swallowing roar. Zhao Zhong directly used a mystic low-level fist technique when he was 5 or 6 meters away from Yu Haoran. This Howling Sky Fist technique was one of the Zhao clan's clan treasures. He had been painstakingly cultivating it all this time, and it was also his strongest technique to date. Following Zhao Zhong's deep roar, a giant white wolf about 6 meters tall and 9 meters long charged out from his fist. Subsequently, the giant white wolf howled at the sky, then lowered its head and charged towards Yu Haoran. Autumn's lingering intent. Seeing the rapidly approaching giant white wolf, Yu Haoran did not panic in the slightest. He stretched out his left hand and lightly patted the giant white wolf. A giant yellow palm directly appeared on top of the giant white wolf's head. When Yu Haoran was a Grade 10 martial warrior, although he was able to use Yuanli to attack from a distance, he was limited by his cultivation and the quality and quantity of his Yuanli. Not only was the Yuanli transformed into an illusory object, but its attack power was also not very strong. Now that his cultivation had broken through the Martial Master realm and reached the middle Grade 5 Martial Master realm, the giant palm he transformed from his Yuanli was not only 90% similar to a real palm, but its attack power had also reached the middle Grade 9 Martial Master realm. Chapter 345. 100 Chi Gate Training Peak. Thus, when the yellow palm formed from Yuanli was about to grab the white wolf, Yu Haoran did not stop attacking. Relying on his wind steps, which had just broken through to the pinnacle, he turned into a bolt of lightning and closed in on Zhao Zhong. He planned to use long-range attacks and close-range attacks to defeat or even kill Zhao Zhong. Trying his best to control the white wolf to dodge and counterattack the yellow palm's attack had already taken up most of Zhao Zhong's energy. At this moment, seeing Yu Haoran closing in on him like lightning, Zhao Zhong's expression slightly changed. But immediately after, he took a deep breath and used his Yuanli to create a spirit item to self-destruct. After perishing together with the yellow palm, Zhao Zhong hurriedly gathered all his energy to deal with Yu Haoran's close-range attack. To be able to make the prompt decision to self-destruct a spirit item and use all his energy to deal with his close-range attack, Yu Haoran was quite impressed with Zhao Zhong's reaction and decisiveness. However, admiration was one thing, but the fixed attack method would not change. Thus, relying on the speed of his wind steps, Yu Haoran used the light wind palm and the 7 injuring fists in succession. Every attack was aimed at Zhao Zhong's vital points. In the beginning, because Yu Haoran was not too familiar with his strength, Zhao Zhong was still able to block a portion of his attack. However, as Yu Haoran became more familiar with his strength after breaking through, not only did his attacks become faster and more strange, but the strength of his attacks also began to increase by several times. This time, not only did it become harder for Zhao Zhong to block, but even if he successfully blocked the attacks, his arms would become numb due to the strength of Yu Haoran's attacks. At this moment, How could Zhao Zhong not understand why Yu Haoran was able to release the aura of a mid-ninth grade martial master? Other than his cultivation of a mid-fifth grade martial master, his physical body's grade was also not inferior to his cultivation. Both his cultivation and physical body had broken through at the same time, and both had reached around the 5th grade martial master realm. In Zhao Zhong's eyes, Yu Haoran was no longer something that could be described as monstrous. If it was said that Yu Haoran was the reincarnation of an immortal god, Zhao Zhong would not doubt it. After 30 or so moves, not only was Zhao Zhong at a disadvantage, but his vital points were also heavily hit by Yu Haoran, causing him to suffer a certain amount of injuries. Although he wanted to plead for mercy or turn around to escape, Zhao Zhong knew that he could not do so. Putting aside whether Yu Haoran would be willing to let him go, just the oath he had made using the laws of the heavenly Tao made him unable to flee. Otherwise, there was no need for Yu Haoran to personally make a move. The laws of the heavenly Tao would make a move to destroy him. Left with no other choice, Zhao Zhong could only use his full strength, exchanging life for life, exchanging injury for injury in a suicidal attack, forcing Yu Haoran to withdraw his palm and retreat. Zhao Zhong took the opportunity to leave the battlefield, and then took out a bright red medicinal pill. Destruction Pill. After seeing the red pill that Zhao Zhong took out, Yu Haoran's expression changed slightly. The Destruction Pill used the power of the pill to directly ignite the Dantian's origin energy, allowing one to obtain 10 times the strength of one's body. The amount of strength one could obtain depended entirely on the grade of the Destruction Pill. As someone who was proficient in the art of alchemy, Yu Haoran could tell that the Destruction Pill in Zhao Zhong's hand had reached the 8th level just by looking at the size and color of the pill in his hand. In other words, it could increase Zhao Zhong's strength by 3 times. A 3-fold increase in strength would allow Zhao Zhong's strength to reach the peak of a martial master. Of course, there were advantages and disadvantages to increasing one's strength by several times. While using the Destruction Pill to ignite origin energy, it would also cause a martial artist's meridians, blood vessels, internal organs, and dantian to suffer serious injuries. If it was serious, it could cause a drop in realm by several times or even tens of times, and it would be difficult to recover. Therefore, unless they were forced to a certain extent, no martial artist would be willing to use the Destruction Pill. With the 8th level Destruction Pill that Zhao Zhong had consumed, not only would he need to recuperate in bed for at least half a year after the effects of the pill wore off, he would also not be able to absorb the slightest trace of spiritual energy to increase his cultivation. To Zhao Zhong, who was part of the younger generation, this was not as simple as a serious injury. It was very likely that he would be surpassed by disciples of the same generation, thus losing his current status and identity. Yu Haoran, speak the truth. Although he had taken out the Destruction Pill, Zhao Zhong did not immediately consume it. Instead, he looked at Yu Haoran with a complicated expression and spoke with a tone full of regret. If I had known from the beginning that you possessed a heaven-defying aptitude and a valiant strength that completely surpassed mine, not only would I not have provoked you, I would have even persuaded the sect leader to resolve the grudges between us. If it was possible, I would have even become friends with you. At this point, Zhao Zhong bitterly smiled and shook his head. Then, he directly consumed the Destruction Pill and raised his head to look at Yu Haoran. His face revealed a trace of determination as he spoke. Unfortunately, there is no medicine for regret in this world. Since the matter has already happened, there is no use in regretting it. In order to make up for the mistakes that I have made, there is no use in regretting it. At this point, Zhao Zhong's originally bitter smile was replaced by a sinister expression as he angrily roared. Yu Haoran, prepare to die. Facing Zhao Zhong, whose strength was at the peak of the 9th grade martial master, Yu Haoran's expression only became serious for a moment. As long as Zhao Zhong's strength did not exceed the martial master realm, then he had the confidence to defeat his opponent. returning spring, scorching summer. He consecutively used his Yuan Li to form 2 light wind palms. Then, he used half of his energy to control the green and red palms, one from the left and one from the right, to attack Zhao Zhong. At the same time, he continued to use the speed of his movement technique to close in on Zhao Zhong. Then, he used close combat techniques to quickly consume the Yuan Li burning in his dantian. Zhao Zhong took a deep breath when he saw the 2 giant palms coming at him from the left and right. Then, he stretched out his arms, intending to use his own strength to forcefully resist the 2 giant palms, one green and one red. Boom! Since Zhao Zhong was confident in his own strength, Yu Haoran naturally would not disappoint him. He controlled the green and red palms with his consciousness, smashing them together in a manner that would destroy both jade and common stone. Accompanied by a deafening explosion, Zhao Zhong, who had stretched out his arms, was not smashed into a meat patty by the 2 palms. Instead, he had successfully blocked the force of the 2 palms. However, even though he successfully blocked the power of the 2 palms from Zhao Zhong's bent arms, as well as the sweat dripping down his forehead like rain, even if he blocked the power of the 2 palms just now, it still made him feel uncomfortable, and at the same time, he also received extremely serious injuries. Because he was prepared to destroy both jade and common stone, when the green and red palms were blocked by Zhao Zhong, their strength had been exhausted. In the end, they turned into a gentle breeze and disappeared into the air. However, the moment the green and red palms disappeared, Yu Haoran, who had used his movement technique to close in on Zhao Zhong, took advantage of the moment when he was gasping for breath to send a bone-piercing cold wind palm towards his chest. Just as the bone-piercing cold wind palm was about to land on Zhao Zhong's chest, Zhao Zhong suddenly raised his head with a strange smile on his face. Not good. Seeing the strange smile on Zhao Zhong's face, the experienced Yu Haoran immediately knew what Zhao Zhong wanted to do. Chapter 346. 100 Qi Gate Trial Peak. Trying to run? It's too late. Zhao Zhong grinned as he watched Yu Haoran forcefully withdraw his palm technique and retreat. Then, he reached out and grabbed Yu Haoran's shoulder, trying to pull Yu Haoran into his embrace with all his might. Not good. In the forest not far from the trial peak, the expert surnamed Ma, who had been using his divine sense to observe the battle, realized that the Yuan Li in Zhao Zhong's body had started to go berserk. His expression changed as he realized that something was wrong. Then, he didn't have time to explain to the crowd. He directly flew out of the forest and sped up towards Yu Haoran. Zhao Zhong, you want to use your dantian to self-destruct and drag me down with you? Dream on. Zhao Zhong directly grabbed his shoulder. It was impossible for him to break free in an instant. If he couldn't break free in an instant, then he wouldn't be able to avoid the destructive power of his dantian's self-destruction. Therefore, Yu Haoran decisively gave up on the idea of retreating. He put his index and middle fingers together and sent a message to Thaling with his consciousness. Thaling, lend me a hand. The powerful divine sense avoided the surveillance of the Enforcer Peak's divine sense and directly attached to Yu Haoran's 2 fingers, increasing the speed and power of his attacks. Pooh! Even though he had burned all of his Yuan Li and obtained the strength of a peak 9th grade martial master, Zhao Zhong's defense didn't increase. Furthermore, with the support of Thaling's divine sense, the attack speed and power of his 2 fingers had already exceeded that of a martial master. Therefore, just as Zhao Zhong's dantian was about to explode, 2 fingers directly pierced into his dantian. The Yuan power contained in the 2 fingers, as well as the power of the Tower Spirit's divine sense, directly disrupted the Yuan power in his dantian. Zhao Zhong's plan to explode his dantian and use the destructive power of the explosion to kill his opponent instantly fell through. The expert surnamed Ma, who had flown out of the forest to help, was stunned when he saw that Yu Haoran had successfully stopped Zhao Zhong from self-destructing his dantian. Then, he returned to the forest with a face full of admiration and praised disciple Zhao. Martial nephew Zhao, I have to say that your decision just now was very wise. Forming a good relationship with Yu Haoren will not only benefit the Enforcer Peak, but it will also bring you unimaginable benefit. Martial Uncle Ma, what happened just now? Disciple Zhao didn't feel the slightest bit complacent in the face of Master Ma's praise. He only wanted to know what had happened a moment ago that caused Master Ma to soar into the air and directly leave the forest. It's like this. Soon after, the expert with the surname Ma explained in detail what had just happened to the disciple with the surname Zhao as well as the law enforcement peak disciples in the forest. He let them know how important it was to befriend a genius like Yu Haoren who possessed both heaven-defying talent and abundant battle experience. Impossible! Zhao Zhong shouted in disbelief when he saw that the explosion of his dantian had not only failed, but also that the burning origin energy was flowing out of the hole in his dantian. His cultivation of a 9th-grade martial master was rapidly falling. In fact, after the first exchange, Zhao Zhong knew that he might not be Yu Haoren's opponent when he discovered that the reason why Yu Haoren, who was only a 5th-grade martial master, had the strength of a 9th-grade martial master was because his physical body and cultivation had broken through at the same time. Not only did the first exchange confirm his conjecture, but the strength that Yu Haoren had erupted with, the battle experience, and the ruthlessness of his attacks had far exceeded his imagination. He knew very well that he was definitely not Yu Haoren's opponent. At the same time, Zhao Zhong knew that he was bound to die today due to the restrictions of the Heavenly Tao Oath. Therefore, when he planned to use the destruction elixir to burn all the origin energy in his dantian, he had already planned to use the method of exploding his dantian to die together with Yu Haoren. If that was the case, Sect Master Zhao Ji might treat his clan members well on account of him helping them eliminate the greatest hidden danger. However, even if he had made sufficient preparations in advance, even if he did not hesitate to use the burning origin energy to forcefully resist the origin energy transformed palms, he deliberately exposed a fatal flaw to lure Yu Haoren into the trap. However, in the end, Yu Haoren still destroyed the explosion of his dantian. This caused Zhao Zhong to be in disbelief and his heart to be like dead ashes. After lightly sending Zhao Zhong flying with a palm, Yu Haoren's gaze turned to Zhao Xinyu. Come here, all of you come here quickly. After seeing that Yu Haoren did not conceal the strong murderous intent in his eyes, Zhao Xinyu, who was almost scared out of his wits, hurriedly ordered the 20 or so experts who had been arranged to block Yu Haoren's escape route to come over and protect his safety. Zhao Xinyu, with my strength and speed, do you think that these people can protect your safety? Looking at the 20 or so martial master disciples who quickly gathered in front of Zhao Xinyu, Yu Haoren asked with a cold smile. Yu Haoren, you can't touch me. Otherwise, Qingyun Peak's Feng Qingyun won't be able to protect you. The entire 100 Qi Gate won't be able to protect you. Even though there were 20 or so martial master experts guarding in front of him, Zhao Xinyu still felt unsafe when he thought of the strength Yu Haoren had just revealed and his lightning-like speed. Therefore, while he threatened Yu Haoren, he used a special method to inform his nominal master, who was actually his biological father, Zhao Ji. Zhao Xinyu, I'm afraid that all the disciples in the sect know about the special relationship between you and sect leader Zhao Ji. Hearing Zhao Xinyu's threat, especially when he said that even the 100 Qi Gate couldn't protect him, Yu Haoren immediately became interested. Therefore, he directly exposed the special relationship between Zhao Xinyu and Zhao Ji to test if he could find out the origin of the power behind Zhao Xinyu. With the aptitude that I, Yu Haoren, have just revealed and the assistance of the secret transformation technique, even if I kill you now, I'm afraid that Zhao Ji can't do anything to me. So, I don't know what you're really relying on. Or rather, who is your real backer? My mother is the Deputy Pavilion Master of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion. At the moment of life and death, Zhao Xinyu, who cherished his life, ignored his father and mother's repeated warnings and directly revealed who his real backer was. When he heard that Zhao Xinyu's mother was the Deputy Pavilion Master of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion, Yu Haoran couldn't help but gasp. In the forest not far from the trial peak, when the expert surnamed Ma heard that Zhao Xinyu's mother was the Deputy Pavilion Master of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion, his face instantly darkened. The Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion was one of the 3 great chambers of commerce in the Tianxian continent. They mainly dealt in spiritual medicine, spiritual fruits, spiritual herbs, martial skills, mental cultivation methods, pills, magical weapons, strange beasts, and so on. It could be said that as long as it was a valuable treasure in the Tianxian continent, the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion had a way to find it and sell it at a very high price. Chapter 347. 100 Qi Gate Trial Peak. In his previous life, due to his identity as an alchemist, Yu Haoran had interacted with the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion many times. However, most of the time they had only traded and exchanged resources. Regarding the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion, he did not know much. However, it was also because of his many business contacts that he had a rough understanding of the rules of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion from the staff of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion. For example, the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion had the power structure of the first pavilion, second vice, third elder, fourth protector, fifth hall, sixth helm, and seventh manager. The first pavilion referred to the Pavilion Master of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion. It was said that the Pavilion Master of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion was a beautiful woman who had reached the peak of the 9th grade martial saint realm. However, she usually went in and out of the pavilion with a veil covering her face. No one had seen her real face. Her beautiful face was only a guess. It was said that the veil covering the Pavilion Master of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion was actually a special weapon of the upper grade of the Exalt realm. Whoever could take off the veil on her face would be able to win her heart. Not only would he be able to win her heart, he would also be able to obtain the endless wealth of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion. Of course, no one knew whether this rumor was true or not. This was because until his rebirth, he had never heard of anyone who could take off the veil on the face of the Pavilion Master of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion. The second vice referred to the 2 vice Pavilion Masters of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion. Although Yu Haoran also did not have the most direct contact with the 2 vice Pavilion Masters, he had heard some stories about the 2 vice Pavilion Masters. For example, the 2 vice Pavilion Masters of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion were like the Pavilion Master. They were also extremely beautiful women. For example, the personalities of the 2 vice Pavilion Masters and the way they handled things were 2 extremes. One had a fiery temperament and did things swiftly and decisively. The other was as quiet as jade and did things without revealing anything. However, he did not know which Vice Pavilion Master Zhao Xinyu's mother was. Chapter 348. 100 Qi Gate Trial Peak. The reason why Zhao Xinyu lied without blushing and his heart skipping a beat was because there was no substantial evidence for the first 2 plots against him, except for the magic weapon that could restrict the transformation secret technique that Zhao Xinyu had just refined using the gold-devouring beetles' corpses. The heads of the 7 law enforcement peak disciples who had participated in the ambush and caused eldest senior brother to be seriously injured were still hanging on the big tree at the bottom of the Clear Breeze Peak. Zhao Zong, who had controlled the layout of the Blue Moon Secret Realm, had long died in the underground cave in the depths of the Secret Realm. Therefore, it was impossible to sentence Zhao Xinyu to death based on the conflict just now and the magic weapon that restricted the transformation secret technique. Although it wouldn't work, Yu Haoran had his own reasons for directly exposing it by lying. Firstly, he wanted to stall for time. He hoped that he could delay until the power of the magic weapon that restricted the transformation secret technique disappeared, so that he could transform into a power King Kong ape and fight with Zhao Ji. He also wanted to let Zhao Ji and his disciples know that he, Yu Haoran, could not be provoked. Secondly, he wanted to let everyone in the sect know what kind of person his illegitimate son, Zhao Xinyu, was. He wanted to take the opportunity to weaken Zhao Ji's reputation and then increase the intensity of the sect's faction competition so that he could benefit from it. Yu Haoran, state your request. He didn't feel the slightest change in Yu Haoran's mood, which meant that he didn't lie just now. He must have evidence of Zhao Xinyu's plot to frame him. Now, it was the critical moment to strengthen the sect leader's faction with the support of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion behind Zhao Xinyu's mother. For the time being, it was not easy to have a direct conflict with Yu Haoran, who had the transformation secret technique and acted without scruples, and Feng Qinyun, who was behind him. Therefore, Zhao Ji planned to use the temptation of benefits to make Yu Haoran temporarily give up finding trouble with Zhao Xinyu. After all, Zhao Xinyu was someone that the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion was willing to support and help him. Now, nothing must happen to Zhao Xinyu. Otherwise, he would lose the support of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion. Seeing that Zhao Ji wanted to reconcile, Yu Haoran couldn't help but fall into deep thought. Actually, he was only pretending to be deep in thought. Right now, he was silently counting down in his heart, waiting for the power of the artifact that restricted the secret transformation technique to disappear. Just as Yu Haoran pretended to be deep in thought and waited for the power of the Dharma artifact to disappear in the forest not far from the trial peak, Gao Luanping, who was wearing a light purple robe, silently appeared in the forest. "Greetings, Peak Master." As an expert whose cultivation had reached the martial arts Grandmaster realm, the expert surnamed Ma immediately sensed Gao Luanping's appearance and hurriedly stood up to greet him. "Greetings, Peak Master." Everyone had been listening to Master Ma's narration of the conflict that had occurred at the bottom of the mountain. Therefore, his action of standing up and saluting was also noticed by the dozens of disciples present. Seeing that the Peak Master had come in person, the disciples led by Zhao hurriedly stood up and bowed. "You're welcome." After indicating that everyone didn't need to be so polite, Gao Luanping looked at disciple Zhao with a smile on his face and praised. "Zhao Lei, well done. Thank you for your kindness, Peak Master." To be able to receive the Peak Master's personal praise, Zhao Lei was in awe and trepidation at the same time as he hurriedly defended himself. "Peak Master, actually, I haven't done anything yet, let alone kill 2 birds with 1 stone in the end." Patting Zhao Lei's shoulder, Gao Luanping raised his head and looked in the direction of the trial peak as he softly muttered to himself, "Your plan has already succeeded. Today, regardless of whether Zhao Ji and Yu Haoran reconcile or not, the conflict between them has already accumulated to the limit. Perhaps it won't be long before the Gate Master's faction and the Clear Cloud Peaks faction erupt into a faction life and death battle that hasn't occurred in the 100 Qi Gate for hundreds of years." Faction life and death battle. Hearing the Peak Master mention the faction life and death battle, Zhao Lei and Master Ma looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. "Peak Master, it shouldn't be that bad." Master Ma, who understood the cruelty and severity of the faction life and death battle, said in disbelief. "The faction life and death battle is a battle to the death. Our 100 Qi Gate has existed for several thousand years, and the faction life and death battle has only occurred twice. However, those 2 factional life and death battles only happened because there was already an irreconcilable hatred between the 2 sides." At this point, the expert surnamed Ma raised his head and glanced at the trial peak. Although Yu Haoran's talent and potential are outstanding, and he also possesses a secret transformation technique, in the end, he is only a disciple who has just entered the sect. What qualifications does he have to decide the faction life and death battle? Let's wait and see. Gal Wumping didn't explain much in this regard. He only left behind these profound words and quietly watched the conversation below the trial peak. After pondering for nearly a minute and a half, Yu Haoran raised his head and looked at Zhao Ji as the energy barrier formed by the gold-devouring beetles began to fade. "Gate Master, I only have 3 requests." "Speak." He wasn't afraid of requests, but he was afraid of no requests. As long as Yu Haoran was willing to make a request, it meant that he wanted to reconcile. "The first request is for Zhao Xinyu to kneel at the foot of Clear Cloud Peak for 3 days to atone for the 3 times he tried to frame me." Pointing at Zhao Xinyu, Yu Haoran raised his first request. "No, even if I die, I won't kneel at the foot of Clear Cloud Peak." Before Zhao Ji could reply to Yu Haoran's first request, Zhao Xinyu angrily refused. Ignoring the furious Zhao Xinyu, Yu Haoran stared at Zhao Ji in the air and asked, "Gate Master Zhao, what do you think?" Coldly looking at Yu Haoran, Zhao Ji forcefully suppressed his anger and asked, "Yu Haoran, since you also know of the special relationship between me and Xinyu, what difference does it make if he kneels or if I kneel? In that case, there's no room for discussion." Zhao Ji's categorical refusal was not out of Yu Haoran's expectations. Because he didn't want to reconcile, he waved his hands, indicating that there was no need to continue negotiating. At the same time, he planned to activate the large power King Kong Ape's blood essence that he hadn't consumed much of. "Yu Haoran, change the condition." Looking at the red energy circle that was fading and finally disappearing, Zhao Ji, who had adjusted his emotions, said indifferently, "Asking people to kneel is indeed a bit excessive, especially in public." Even if it was an obviously insulting request like kneeling, Zhao Ji could resist the urge to attack. This could only mean one thing: Zhao Ji must have encountered a lot of trouble right now, causing him to not dare to make a move against him easily. It wasn't Yu Haoran's style to not take advantage of the situation, so he quickly changed his strategy and planned to cut off a few pieces of meat from Zhao Ji's body. Chapter 349. 100 Qi Gate Trial Peak. First, Zhao Xinyu is not allowed to plot against me in the future. Otherwise, I won't give anyone face and will kill him directly. After careful consideration, Yu Haoran made his first request. No problem. Not only did Yu Haoran take the initiative to change the conditions, but his first request was not excessive at all. This made Zhao Ji think that Yu Haoran had thought it through and was planning to reconcile. Therefore, Zhao Ji's originally gloomy expression gradually eased a lot, and he very readily nodded in agreement. Second, all the disciples of my Clear Cloud Peak, whether now or in the future, have their status and treatment automatically upgraded by 1 level. The achievement hall will not allow any difficulties. Seeing that Zhao Ji had answered so readily, Yu Haoran couldn't help but laugh coldly in his heart. The first request was just an appetizer. The request that really gave Zhao Ji a headache had yet to come. Faced with Yu Haoran's second request, Zhao Ji carefully considered it and felt that this request was not excessive. Directly upgrading their status and treatment by 1 level would take up a portion of the sect's cultivation resources. However, the number of disciples in the Clear Cloud Peak was very small. Even if all of them were upgraded by 1 level, compared to the tens of thousands of disciples in the 100 Qi Gate, it was only a drop in the ocean. Okay. Therefore, Zhao Ji also very readily nodded in agreement. Third request, like Enforcer Peak, your 100 Qi Peak's treasure vault must also be unconditionally open to me for 1 day. No. Impossible. Hearing Yu Haoran's third request, Zhao Ji and Zhao Xinyu did not even consider it and rejected it at the same time. The empty Enforcer Peak's treasure vault was still there. Yu Haoran's bandit-like behavior was still vivid in their minds. How could Zhao Ji agree to let him enter the 100 Qi Peak's treasure vault, and open it unconditionally for 1 day? Furthermore, a batch of cultivation resources from the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion had just been stored in the treasure vault not long ago. he even more could not allow Yu Haoran to sweep through it. Sect Leader Zhao, compared to the Enforcer Peak's Peak Master, whether it is courage, breadth of mind, or decisive character, you are far too lacking. Yu Haoran shook his head with a look of disappointment and sarcasm. In the forest not far from the trial peak, when Gao Luanping heard Yu Haoran compare himself to Yu Ji, he couldn't help but clench his fists in his sleeve. If it wasn't for the fact that he had grafted the demonic arts onto Ouyang Haoyu, he wouldn't have agreed to Yu Haoran's outrageous request. If they had known in advance that Yu Haoran had a storage device that could store a large number of items, they would have asked the senior statesman group and all the martial emperors of the other factions to join forces and defeat Yu Haoran, even if they had to pay a certain price. Originally, Gao Luanping's heart had been aching because he had lost the treasures he had accumulated for hundreds of years. Now that he heard Yu Haoran's comparison, his heart ached again. Yu Haoran, change your request. Even if Yu Haoran compared him to Gao Luanping, Zhao Ji could not agree to Yu Haoran's third request. He could only change his request again. Sect Leader Zhao, I've already given you enough face by not letting Zhao Xinyu kneel at the foot of my clear cloud peak. However, you can't push your luck. Everything has to go according to your wishes. When Yu Haoran saw Zhao Ji reject him without any room for discussion, the unhappy Yu Haoran could not help but scold him angrily. Yu Haoran, your third request is too much. Seeing that Yu Haoran was going overboard and even directly criticizing him, the sect leader of the 100 Qi Gate, Zhao Ji could not suppress his anger and reprimanded him. Could it be that your clear cloud peak's treasury is also open to me or Xinyu for a day without any restrictions? Of course. In the face of Zhao Ji's provocation, Yu Haoran did not hesitate at all and directly nodded in agreement. Before Feng Qinyun took over the position of Peak Master of Clear Cloud Peak's status in the 100 Qi Gate was even lower than that of Beastmaster Peak, let alone a treasury. Even in the years since Feng Qinyun became the Peak Master, due to his aloof personality, the treasury had not collected any valuable treasures. Therefore, even if Zhao Ji uprooted the entire treasury of Clear Cloud Peak would not suffer any losses. Yu Haoran would also not have any objections. Zhao Ji hadn't expected that Yu Haoran would actually agree. This made him so angry that he was speechless. Yu Haoran's words had been used to prove the importance of a treasure trove to a faction, but Zhao Ji hadn't expected Yu Haoran to agree. Taking a few deep breaths, Zhao Ji suppressed the anger that rose in his heart when he was rebuked and said, Yu Haoran, I'll say it again. Change the condition. Seeing that Zhao Ji was unwilling to agree to the third request no matter what, Yu Haoran knew that if he did not show some tricks and let the other party know his strength, Zhao Ji would not agree. Therefore, he directly activated the blood essence of the large power King Kong ape. After his cultivation and physical body had broken through to the martial master realm, whether it was his body's ability to adapt to the blood essence of exotic beasts or the speed at which he used the blood essence to transform into exotic beasts, it had at least increased by several times. In a short 5 seconds, Yu Haoran had transformed into a 64-meter-tall giant ape. Although she had heard her brother mention that Yu Haoran had the ability to transform into an exotic beast while they were escaping, Gongsun Yuding cried out in fright when she saw Yu Haoran standing over 60 meters tall like a mountain. Sister, don't worry. Gongsun Yiming hurriedly explained and comforted his sister after hearing her scream. Although Yu Shixiang has transformed into a large power King Kong ape, his consciousness is still Yu Shixiang, so we won't be in any danger. Roar! After transforming into a large power King Kong ape, his overall height had already surpassed Zhao Ji, who was standing in the air, so Yu Haoran roared at Zhao Ji from above, and then roared with a thunderous voice. Sect Leader Zhao, the 3 requests just now are Yu Haoran's bottom line. If you don't agree, then we can only fight. Yu Haoran, do you think I'm afraid of you? Seeing that Yu Haoran had transformed into a large power King Kong ape to threaten him, Zhao Ji, who was enraged, used the power of the Martial King realm to threaten him. Feeling that the aura rising from Zhao Ji's body had reached the peak of the 6th stage of the Martial King, Yu Haoran could not help but frown. This was because the large power King Kong Ape's blood essence that Palace had gifted him was only at the 4th rank of the 5th step, which was the peak of the 4th stage of the Martial King realm. Although the strength of strange beasts was far stronger than human martial warriors, the higher the realm, the smaller the difference in strength between strange beasts and human martial warriors. In other words, even if he activated all the energy in the large power King Kong Ape's blood essence, he would at most be able to unleash the strength of a peak 5th stage martial king, and would still not be a match for Zhao Ji. Chapter 350. 100 Qi Gate Trial Peak. Yu Haoran, don't worry, I have a way to defeat Zhao Ji. Thaling hurriedly reminded Yu Haoran when he sensed the slight fluctuation of emotions in Zhao Ji's heart, as well as Zhao Ji's peak 6th grade martial emperor cultivation. Thaling, if I have to expose your existence in order to defeat Zhao Ji, I'd rather take a step back and change my request. After hearing Thaling's reminder, Yu Haoran mistakenly thought that Thaling wanted to use the power of his divine sense to secretly help him, so he hurriedly refused. It was different from the palace. The arrogant palace disdained to use any external help. Even if Thaling took the initiative to expose his existence, it would not cause the palace to be greedy and fight over him. However, if the existence of Thaling, especially the victor, which contained the law of time and could accelerate time, was exposed, not to mention the martial emperors in the 100 Qi Gate, even the 7 top sects, the inherited families, and the reclusive martial emperors would fight over him. Yu Haoran, I can clearly guarantee you that before your cultivation reaches the peak of the 9th grade martial saint realm and your strength reaches the martial emperor realm, I will never expose my existence, nor will I leak any information about Victor. Although Yu Haoran did not state the reason for his refusal, Thaling was very clear about his concerns and worries, so he hurriedly promised Yu Haoran. Thaling, what do you mean? If he did not use the help of his powerful divine sense, then how could he defeat Zhao Ji, who was slightly stronger than him? Yu Haoran, in the underground cave deep in the secret realm, when you unintentionally activated the battle consciousness left by the ancient monkey emperor in the As I Will cudgel, I have been thinking about how to make you better use the cudgel technique created by the monkey emperor. And in the spiritual fog, when the As I Will cudgel finally chose to leave, I finally decided that before your cultivation reaches the martial ancestor realm and you can't refine your life source magic weapon, I will refine a weapon for you that only needs to use the technique. Thankfully, you only need to use a third of the horn to increase the offensive strength of your intrinsic dermic artifact. With the remaining horn and some other materials, I finally managed to refine a rod that is as hard as a cudgel as I wish. It is able to completely withstand and execute that staff technique. At this point, a staff that was emitting a purple light, its shape and length very similar to my staff, appeared in Yu Haoran's sea of consciousness. His mind touched the purple cudgel, and at the same time, he recalled the moves and insights of the One Sky cudgel technique. Following that, Yu Haoran felt that the purple cudgel refined by Thaling was even closer to his mind, and could even increase the power of the One Sky cudgel technique. Thaling, thank you. Using his mind to take out the purple cudgel from his sea of consciousness, the battle consciousness of the One Sky cudgel directly fused into the purple cudgel. Following that, Yu Haoran, who had transformed into a large power King Kong ape, held the purple cudgel in his hand and directly soared into the air. All of his consciousness was fused into the battle comprehension of the One Sky cudgel technique. As a master of refining, the purple cudgel refined by Thaling also had the ability to shrink and shrink. Therefore, under the influence of the battle comprehension and consciousness of the One Sky cudgel technique, the purple cudgel instantly grew longer and thicker, quickly becoming a giant cudgel that was over 50 meters long. Following that, Yu Haoran roared, One Sky Cudgel Technique. Yu Haoran, you're too arrogant. Do you really think that I, Zhao Ji, won't be able to deal with you just because you transformed into a mutated beast and have the strength of a mutated beast? Turning his head to look at Qingyun Peak, he did not feel Feng Qingyun's aura. Zhao Ji knew that Feng Qingyun was either not at Qingyun Peak, or he would not interrupt the battle between the two for the time being. Therefore, he roared angrily and soared into the sky. He planned to teach Yu Haoran a lesson and let him know that the secret transformation technique was not omnipotent. However, just as Zhao Ji soared into the sky and was about to approach the purple cudgel in Yu Haoran's hands that had grown longer and thicker, an aura of death caused his expression to change. With a sweep of his mind, he discovered that the source of the danger of death was actually the staff technique that Yu Haoran was currently using. In the forest not far away from the trial peak, when Yu Haoran transformed into a Power King Kong ape and was about to fight with Zhao Ji, Gao Luanping could not help but be overjoyed. Finally, there was someone who could follow in his footsteps and not let him become the laughing stock of the 100 Qi Gates upper echelons. However, when Zhao Ji revealed his cultivation at the peak of the 6th level of the Martial King realm, Gao Luanping's face immediately darkened. This was because he did not expect that Zhao Ji, whose talent and potential were not as good as his, would actually catch up to him silently and even surpass him. This made Gao Luanping feel very surprised. Fortunately, as long as his cultivation increased to the peak of the 9th level of the Martial King realm and then directly transferred all his power into Ouyang Haoyu's body, then he could use the grafting of demonic arts to break through to the Martial Saint realm in one fell swoop. Therefore, when Zhao Ji revealed his cultivation and strength, Gao Luanping only felt a little surprised. He did not feel too much pressure himself. However, when he felt Yu Haoran's staff technique, he was immediately stunned by the terrifying power formed by the staff technique. Especially the aftermath of the power formed by the staff technique, which directly destroyed the void above the trial peak, he could not help but guess. The power of the peak of the 9th level of the Martial King realm. Shaking his head, Gao Luanping knew that although this level of power could also tear the void, it was far from the extent of the aftermath of the purple staff technique's power. The power of the early stage of the Martial Saint realm. As soon as this thought appeared in his mind, Gao Luanping rejected it. Because the power of the early stage of the Martial Saint realm could not reach this level of power without using the power of law. In the end, Gao Luanping rated the power of this staff technique as the peak of the 9th level of the Martial Saint realm. Although Gao Luanping rated the power of the Skyward Staff technique as the peak of the 9th level of the Martial Saint realm, Zhao Ji, who was under the attack of the staff, was very clear that the power of the Skyward Staff Yu Haoran was now beyond the peak of the 9th level of the Martial Saint realm, close to the power of the Martial Saint realm. At this moment, Zhao Ji's heart was filled with endless regret. If he had known that Yu Haoran had such a strong attack power, he would have agreed to Yu Haoran's 3 requests from the beginning and would not have put himself in a dangerous situation. Fortunately, it was not too late to agree now. Therefore, Zhao Ji gathered the power of the peak of the 6th level of the Martial Saint realm and directly shouted at Yu Haoran. Junior apprentice nephew Yu, I agree to your 3rd request just now. Please stop. As long as the Skyward Staff was used, it could not be stopped at all. Moreover, Yu Haoran also did not expect that the purple staff refined by Thaling would be able to unleash the power of the Skyward Staff technique, not losing to the As I Wish staff in the slightest. Therefore, after hearing Zhao Ji's request, although Yu Haoran wanted to withdraw the Skyward Staff technique, he was unable to control the attack of the staff technique. Helpless, he could only try his best to change the direction of the Skyward Staff technique's attack and loudly remind him. Quickly avoid the range of the staff technique's attack. After hearing Yu Haoran's reminder, Zhao Ji immediately knew that even if Yu Haoran transformed into the 4th level of the 5th level of the Power King Kong ape, he would still be unable to control the staff technique that was close to the power of the martial saint realm. In order to avoid being affected by the power of the staff, while Zhao Ji dodged, he directly took Zhao Xinyu away from the crowd. Chapter 351. 100 Qi Gate Trial Peak. Boom! As the sky-facing stick technique hit the ground heavily, a crack that was about 10,000 meters long, dozens of meters deep, and nearly 100 meters wide suddenly appeared on the ground. The crack stretched from the foot of the trial peak all the way to the foot of Xianyun Peak. Zhao Ji, who was lucky enough to escape the sky-facing stick technique, looked at the huge crack that was about 10,000 meters long, dozens of meters deep, and nearly 100 meters wide. His face showed a trace of fear. If he had dodged a little later, he would have been affected by the power of the sky-facing stick technique just now. The consequences of being affected would have been severe injuries even if he did not die. Zhao Xinyu, who was being held in Zhao Ji's hand, looked even more frightened after seeing the crack below. Because he had never thought that Yu Haoran not only had the secret method of transformation, but also the real method of invincibility in the 100 Qi Gate. At the same time, he also knew that with such a top demon-level aptitude and such powerful strength and methods, his mother would be willing to sacrifice herself in order to please him. Yu Haoran, not only could he not provoke him in the future, but he would also try to avoid him as much as possible. Gao Luanping, who had left the woods in advance with his men to avoid the attack range of the sky-facing stick technique, was also stunned as he looked at the crack that was about 10,000 meters long. While a trace of horror flashed in his eyes, he also made a decision in his heart. That was to improve his cultivation as soon as possible, merge with Ouyang Haoyu as soon as possible, and then leave the 100 Qi Gate. Otherwise, if they lived together in the same sect, there would be conflicts sooner or later due to various unexpected events. He did not want to face the sky-facing stick technique that Yu Haoran had just used one day. In fact, Gao Luanping was not the only one who had this idea. In the 37 peaks of the 100 Qi Gate, as long as they were masters of the martial arts Grandmaster realm, they were all awakened by the sky-facing stick technique that Yu Haoran had just used. They had also witnessed the terrifying power of the sky-facing stick technique with their own eyes. At this moment, in their hearts, Yu Haoran's danger level was directly raised to the highest level. They used the power of divine thoughts to summon all the disciples in the sect for a meeting. There was only one thing for the meeting. No matter what Yu Haoran wanted to do, even if he wanted to set fire to their own faction's mountain peak or urinate, they pretended not to see it. If anyone provoked Yu Haoran and made him unhappy, don't think that the sect would stand up for you. You either have to beg for Yu Haoran's forgiveness or commit suicide to appease Yu Haoran's anger. Big brother, was all of this really caused by Yu Shixiang? Gong Sun Yuding asked with a trembling voice as she pointed at the crack that she couldn't see the end of. I think so, probably so. Gong Sun Yiming was confused and didn't know how to answer his sister's question. Although he had heard that Yu Haoran could unleash the original strength of an exotic beast after transforming into one, he had never known that he could unleash an even more powerful strength after transforming into an exotic beast. Zhao Ji, the leader of the 100 Feet sect, whose cultivation had reached the martial royal realm, did not even have the courage to resist and directly admitted defeat. This was enough to show how terrifying the power of Yu Haoran's staff technique was. At this moment, Gong Sun Yiming felt honored and proud to join the 100 Qi Gate and become a disciple of Qinyun Peak. Zhao Zhong, who had just been sent flying by Yu Haoran, saw that Yu Haoran was able to erupt with such a powerful strength, forcing sect master Zhao Ji to take the initiative to admit defeat. His heart, which was originally like dead ashes, actually revealed a happy smile on his face, as if dying in Yu Haoran's hands was a very honorable thing. Then, this smile hung on his face forever, and he slowly closed his eyes. Inhale, calm down. Yu Haoran landed in front of Gong Sun Yiming and his sister after performing the skyward strike. He took a few deep breaths and barely suppressed the boiling blood in his body. An uncontrollable excitement appeared on his ape face. Originally, he thought that after losing the staff as I like it, he would no longer be able to perform the skyward strike that was close to the martial venerable realm. However, he had never expected that the purple staff that the tower spirit had refined in such a short period of time would not only allow him to use the skyward strike, but the power of the staff technique would also not be inferior to the skyward strike that he had used with the As I Wish staff. Not only that, the consumption of exotic beasts' blood essence was a third of what it took to use the rod As I Wish. How could Yu Haoran not feel excited? Thaling, thank you. Although there were thousands of words of gratitude in his heart, he could only express his gratitude in the end. Yu Haoran, actually, the purple staff is only half refined. It can be considered a semi-finished product. Facing Yu Haoran's gratitude, Thaling did not say much, but he was still very gratified in his heart. At the same time, through Yu Haoran's use of the purple staff earlier, he realized that the purple staff he had refined was not perfect. There were still some flaws. In the future, if you are able to meet a descendant with the bloodline of the Monkey Emperor, it would be best if you can extract their blood essence and fuse it with the staff. This way, not only will you be able to perfect the staff, you will also have a 90% chance of obtaining the Monkey Emperor's set of staff technique. I understand. Yu Haoran nodded heavily. He knew that in his following training life, other than searching for the treasures in the memories of his previous life and finding out the secrets of the demon sealing secret realm, he now had another difficult task. Sect Leader Zhao, does the third request you agreed to earlier still count? Yu Haoran asked while waving the purple staff in his hand. Of course it counts. Seeing Yu Haoran waving the purple staff in his hand, Zhao Ji hurriedly nodded and promised as he recalled the terrifying staff technique that was close to the power of the martial honorable realm. The 100 Feet Peak's treasury is unconditionally open to Martial Nephew Yu for 1 day. Martial Nephew Yu Haoran is free to choose from the treasures in the treasury. The 100 Feet Peak will not make things difficult for you or keep anything for yourself. At least you know what's good for you. After hearing Zhao Ji's promise, Yu Haoran nodded as he put away the purple staff. He then turned around, intending to call the Gongsun siblings and leave. Seeing that Yu Haoran had not only put away the purple staff, but also turned around to leave, Zhao Ji could not help but heave a sigh of relief. After that, he planned to quickly return to the 100 Feet Peak and transfer the batch of resources that he had just put into the treasury. Otherwise, with Yu Haoran's vicious eyes, the batch of resources would very likely expose his plan. As for the other treasures in the treasury, he had always carried the most precious ones with him. Even if Yu Haoran emptied the entire treasury, he would still be able to accept it. However, just as Zhao Ji was praying that Yu Haoran would leave quickly, Yu Haoran, who had already turned around to leave, suddenly turned around and made another request. Chapter 352. 100 Qi Gate Trial Peak. Martial Nephew Yu, please speak. Yu Haoran's sudden request for additional conditions made Zhao Ji extremely dissatisfied. However, considering the powerful strength that Yu Haoran had just displayed and his unscrupulous way of doing things, he could only suppress his dissatisfaction and speak with an obsequious smile. From today onwards, Gong Sun Yiming and Gong Sun Yuding are disciples of our Qinyun Peak. I hope sect leader Zhao can inform the ancient town sect of this, Yu Haoran said domineeringly as he pointed at Gong Sun Yiming and his sister. No problem. Zhao Ji secretly heaved a sigh of relief when he heard Yu Haoran's additional conditions for accepting 2 disciples who had defected from the ancient town sect. With his relationship with the ancient town sect leader Zhao Ji, he only needed to send a subordinate to inform him of this matter. It was not a condition at all. Therefore, Zhao Ji's reply was very straightforward. Of course, if the ancient town sect is dissatisfied with anything or wants to reason with me, they can come to Qingyun Peak to find me. I'm a very easy person to talk to. After leaving behind a seemingly reasonable but actually unreasonable threat, Yu Haoran directly grabbed Gong's son Yiming and his sister, then soared into the sky and rushed towards Qingyun Peak. Return to 100 Qi Peak. After Yu Haoran left the trial peak with Gong's son Yiming and his sister, the smile on Zhao Ji's face instantly turned gloomy. He turned his head to look at Zhao Xinyu and ordered through gritted teeth. Today, he, Zhao Ji, had lost a lot of face. The dignified sect leader of a second-rate sect, a powerhouse at the peak of the 6th-grade martial emperor realm, had actually been forced to admit defeat by a martial master disciple from his own sect. He even had to hand over the collection that the sect leader had accumulated over hundreds of years. He was afraid that in the future, he would become the target of ridicule. How could the proud and arrogant Zhao Ji not feel angry and depressed? Sect Master, since Yu Haoran will only go to the treasury tomorrow, why don't we take advantage of this time to move all the treasures in the treasury and leave him with an empty treasury? Although Zhao Xinyu had already decided that he would absolutely not provoke Yu Haoran in the future, when he thought about how he was about to hand over the treasure trove that should have belonged to him, Zhao Xinyu still felt extremely unwilling. Therefore, he did not pay attention to Zhao Ji's gloomy expression and made a suggestion. If you want that staff technique that Yu Haoran used just now to directly hit the 100 feet peak, then you can empty the entire treasury in advance. Looking coldly at Zhao Xinyu, Zhao Ji was furious. He could not help but have a question in his heart. Both he and the deputy pavilion master of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion could be said to be dragons and phoenixes among men. Regardless of talent and potential or intelligence, they were all outstanding. How could their son be so stupid and ignorant? If he had not witnessed Zhao Xinyu's birth with his own eyes, he would have doubted whether Zhao Xinyu was really his son. If not for the fact that he still needed Zhao Xinyu as a link in the deal between him and the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion, according to his personality, he would have already slapped Zhao Xinyu into minced meat. If he continued to stay in this world, not only would he embarrass himself, but he would also cause trouble for himself. The more he looked at Zhao Xinyu, the more annoyed Zhao Ji felt. He had originally wanted to bring him back to the 100 feet peak, but now he immediately dismissed the idea. You all return to the 100 feet peak yourselves. After giving the order, Zhao Ji shot into the sky and headed straight for the 100 feet peak. Peak Master, what should we do? Looking at Yu Haoran and Zhao Ji leaving the trial peak, Zhao Lei asked. Because Yu Haoran's staff technique was too powerful, just the aftermath of the staff technique's power had destroyed the forest they were hiding in. Therefore, without the cover of the trees, Gao Luanping and the others were directly exposed to the crowd. There was no need for the master surnamed Ma to use his divine consciousness to explain the situation at the bottom of the trial peak. Continue to act according to your plan. Looking at Zhao Ji, who was quickly returning to the 100 feet peak, a strange smile flashed across Gao Luanping's face. He then turned to Zhao Lei and the others and ordered. Understood. Gao Luanping's accumulated prestige over the years made the dozens of Enforcer Peak disciples at the scene habitually obey. But considering the strength Yu Haoran had just revealed and Zhao Ji's interference, Zhao Lei, who thought more, finally mustered up the courage to ask, Peak Master, what should we do about Yu Haoran and the Sect Master? After we take down Zhao Xinyu and the others, make a trip to the Clear Cloud Peak and tell him about the rules of the Enforcer Peak that Zhao Xinyu violated. With Yu Haoran's intelligence and wisdom, he will definitely guess why we are doing this and will remember this favor. Looking up in the direction of the Clear Cloud Peak, Gao Luanping ordered. As for the Sect Master Zhao Ji, you don't have to worry. I have my own ways to deal with him. Yes. After hearing Gao Luanping's explanation and orders, Zhao Lei's eyes couldn't help but light up. He then hurriedly bowed and led the dozens of Enforcer Peak disciples towards Zhao Xinyu and the others. Clear Cloud Peak. Junior Gongsun, there are very few disciples in the Clear Cloud Peak. Including me and Junior Wu, there are only 10 people in total. Standing on the grass in front of the courtyard of the Hidden Moon Pavilion, Yu Haoran pointed at the dozens of courtyards that were exactly the same and introduced them. Now, you and Yuding are basically considered disciples of our Qinyun Peak. You can choose a side courtyard as your place of cultivation. Looking at the dozens of courtyards in the beautiful environment, Gongsun Yuding asked in surprise, I can choose at will. Although Gongsun Yiming's talent and potential were outstanding, he was, after all, an orphan with no one to rely on and no one to support him. Therefore, their living conditions in the ancient town sect were very ordinary. Her brother, Gongsun Yiming, lived in a courtyard with 3 other disciples with slightly more talent and potential. As for her, Gongsun Yuding, she lived in a row of dilapidated wooden houses with a group of odd-job female disciples. The environment was bad and the conditions were bad. She, who had suffered since she was young, could endure it. The only thing that she couldn't endure was that among the odd-job female disciples, some of the more muscular female disciples looked at her with an expression that made her afraid. Especially when she was bathing, those female disciples would secretly peek at her. Therefore, Gongsun Yuding had long wanted to move away from the place that made her feel afraid. What she hoped for the most was to have an independent environment that completely belonged to her. As long as it's not a courtyard that people live in, Yuding, you can choose at will. Choose at will, Yu Haoran said with a smile. Hearing Yu Haoran's affirmation, Gongsun Yuding immediately jumped up and cheered. That's great. Junior brother Gongsun, I'll take you to see Master now, and then you can perform the apprenticeship ceremony. After waiting for Gongsun Yuding's joyful mood to calm down a little, Yu Haoran turned his head and ordered Gongsun Yiming. Yes, Yu Shixiao. After respectfully responding, Gongsun Yiming directly pulled Gongsun Yuding to his side and motioned for her to be quiet for a while. Regarding this, Yu Haoran just smiled and didn't say anything. Then, he took the brother and sister and went straight to the Pingjing residence. Originally, according to Yu Haoran's idea, he wanted to let Gongsun Yiming and his sister meet Master after a period of time, so as to give Master enough time to heal. But just as he brought Gongsun Yiming and his sister back to Qinyun Peak, he unexpectedly heard Master's spiritual sense transmission, telling him to bring Gongsun Yiming and his sister to see him now. How could Yu Haoran, who had previously studied the 7 insects 7 flowers powder refined by the 5 poisons old man, not know how strong the toxicity was? Chapter 353. Qinyun Peak. But Master, it had been less than a day and a night since he was poisoned. In such a short time, he was able to break the seal of the poison and use the power of his divine sense. This made Yu Haoran feel that his master was powerful, and he was also very interested in how he was able to neutralize the 7 insects and 7 flowers powder in such a short time. Bringing Gongsun Yiming and his sister to the fair residence, he found that the courtyard door was already open. Gesturing to Gongsun Yiming and his sister, Yu Haoran brought them into the cultivation room where Feng Qinyun was cultivating in seclusion. Seeing Feng Qinyun sitting cross-legged on a praying mat, his expression and state not much different from usual, Yu Haoran could not help but be stunned. No matter how powerful Feng Qinyun was, no matter how special the power of law he comprehended was, it was impossible for him to neutralize the poison of the 7 insects and 7 flowers powder in such a short time. Otherwise, the 7 insects and 7 flowers powder would not be ranked 19th in the Tianxian continent. Haoran, don't look at Master's unfathomable appearance. In fact, my state is the same as when I just returned to Qinyun Peak. Seeing the stunned Yu Haoran, although Feng Qinyun had a gentle smile on his face, the tone of his divine sense transmission was very weak. I've heard of Gongsun Yiming before. He is not only a top genius whose talent and potential are not inferior to your 8th senior brother, but also a good seedling who values friendship and righteousness. He is worth cultivating. Although I don't know what method you used to make him leave the ancient town sect and willingly become a disciple of Qingyun Peak, Master knows that you did this for the sake of Qingyun Peak. As a disciple, you worked so hard, so Master will definitely not let you lose face. So, I used a secret method that can temporarily suppress the poison in my body. Not only can I use my divine sense, but my mental state also looks normal. After the apprenticeship ceremony, I will completely sink into the process of self-healing. As for when I can wake up, it will depend on the effect of self-healing. Hearing that his master did not want him to lose face in front of Gongsun Yiming and his sister and forced him to use the secret method with side effects, Yu Haoran was deeply moved. He also decided to go down the mountain as soon as possible and help his master to find the plant insects needed to detoxify the 7 worms and 7 flowers powder. Haoran, aren't you going to introduce him to Master? After nodding at Yu Haoran, Feng Qingyun gently looked at Gongsun Yiming and his sister. Master, this is Gongsun Yiming and Gongsun Yuding. Junior brother Gongsun was originally an outstanding elite disciple of the ancient town faction. He had the talent and potential of a peak martial emperor. Because junior brother Gongsun was treated unfairly by the faction in the Blue Moon Mystery Realm and almost lost his life there. In the end, he was saved by me. In order to repay me for saving his life and to escape the pursuit of the ancient town faction, junior brother Gongsun decided to bring his sister to join the 100 Qi Gate and become a disciple of Qingyun Peak. Yu Haoran introduced with half of the truth and half of the lies. After all, he could not say that the reason why he tried so hard to rope in Gongsun Yiming was because of his sister, Gongsun Yuding. It was even more impossible to say that he knew that Gongsun Yuding had talent and potential that far surpassed her brothers. In the future, she would become a peerless expert whose name would shake the Tianxian continent. In response to Yu Haoran's half-truth explanation, Gongsun Yiming nodded cooperatively to prove the truth of what he had just said. Since that's the case, then I'll accept the both of you. In fact, there was no need for Yu Haoran to explain in such detail. Feng Qingyun would have accepted the Gongsun Yiming siblings on account of him. Therefore, he did not think about whether Yu Haoran's words were true or false. When he agreed to accept the Gongsun siblings, he also gave the same guarantee as Yu Haoran. Gongsun Yiming, if the ancient town faction is dissatisfied with you joining the 100 Qi Gate and becoming a disciple of Qingyun Peak, you can ask them to come find me directly. I will give them a reasonable explanation. Thank you, Peak Master. Seeing that Feng Qingyun was as domineering as Yu Haoran, Gongsun Yiming hurriedly pulled his sister to thank him. Yiming, although you are older than Haoran, Haoran and Jingjun entered the sect first. Therefore, you can only be ranked 11th among the disciples. Although using the secret technique to suppress the poison made Feng Qingyun look normal, every minute the secret technique was used, the threat of the secret technique's backlash would increase by a bit. Therefore, Feng Qingyun decided to save as much of the red tape as possible. Yes, Master. Regarding the ranking of the disciples, every sect's disciples were basically arranged according to this convention. Therefore, Gongsun Yiming did not have any objections or dissatisfaction. Gongsun Yuding, you are Master's 12th disciple, and the only female disciple of Qingyun Peak. Feng Qingyun said to Gongsun Yuding with a smile. Yuding greets Master. Gongsun Yuding excitedly bowed. Yiming, Yuding, Master is now at the critical moment of breaking through and is temporarily unable to leave the cultivation room. So, wait until I have a breakthrough in my cultivation level, then you can perform the ceremony of taking me as your master. Seeing the cute and obedient Gongsun Yuding, Feng Qingyun's heart was filled with joy. However, the moment he relaxed his mind, the poison of the 7 insects, 7 flowers poison quickly attacked him. Originally, Feng Qingyun wanted to complete the ceremony, but he decided to temporarily postpone it. Master, junior brother Gongsun and junior sister Gongsuan's following procedures and cultivation will be handled by this disciple. You should use this time to cultivate. Yu Haoran, who had been paying attention to Feng Qingyun's condition, clearly saw his master frown just now. He knew that the secret technique's effect was about to disappear, so he quickly suggested, "Okay, everything will be handled by you." Nodding to Yu Haoran, Feng Qingyun slowly closed his eyes. "Let's go." Gesturing to the Gongsun Yiming siblings, Yu Haoran led them out of the cultivation room and out of the peace residence. "Junior brother Yiming, junior sister Yuding, I'll take you to see eldest senior brother." Turning his head to look at the automatically closing courtyard door, Yu Haoran's eyes flashed with a trace of worry. Then, he readjusted his emotions and smiled at the Gongsun Yiming siblings. "First of all, eldest senior brother will be in charge of all the affairs of the peak. After you enter the sect, eldest senior brother will personally help you with all the procedures and treatment. Second of all, eldest senior brother will gather all the disciples of the Qingyun faction and let everyone get to know each other. Third of all, since today is junior sister Yuding's day of adulthood, it's a good opportunity to test junior sister Yuding's talent, potential, comprehension, and perseverance in front of all the senior brothers. Then, based on her aptitude, we can make reasonable arrangements for her cultivation. Everything will be decided by Yu Shixiang." Gongsun Yiming did not have any objections to Yu Haoran's arrangements and gestured to him to make all the arrangements. In front of the Qingju Pavilion, just as Yu Haoran led the Gongsun Yiming siblings to the Qingju Pavilion where Chu Zhengyu lived and was about to knock on the door to greet him, a powerful aura suddenly came from the Qingju Pavilion. "Great, eldest senior brother has finally broken through to the martial king realm." After feeling the aura, Yu Haoran could not help but exclaim happily. Hearing Yu Haoran say that the eldest senior brother they were about to meet, Chu Zhengyu, was breaking through to the martial king realm, Gongsun Yiming could not help but feel happy and excited. Chapter 354. Qingyun Peak, in front of Qingju Pavilion. If Qingyun Peak flourished, Gongsun Yiming would have a chance to stand out in the future and face the ancient town faction as a winner. If Qingyun's faction fell, then Gongsun Yiming could only fall along with Qingyun's faction. After all, he chose to betray the ancient town faction by leaving. This kind of betrayal was not tolerated or accepted by any sect or power. In other words, he could only live as a member of Qingyun Peak and die as a ghost of Qingyun Peak. Now that eldest senior brother had successfully broken through to the martial king realm, Qingyun Peak only had 2 martial king realm experts. In addition, Yu Haoran, who had the secret transformation technique and could exert the strength of a martial emperor, Qingyun Peak had officially risen. As Chu Zhengyu was breaking through to the martial king realm, Yu Haoran did not rashly disturb him. He motioned for Gongsun Yiming and his sister to follow him and retreat a distance. He quietly felt the aura and the fluctuations of power when Chu Zhengyu broke through to the martial king realm. The aura formed when a martial king broke through to the martial king realm covered an area of dozens of miles, so it also alarmed the disciples of Qingyun Peak who were cultivating in seclusion. They all left their seclusion and rushed to Qingju Pavilion. "Ninth junior brother, you've been here for a long time." The first person to arrive at Qingju Pavilion was the strongest third senior brother, Dong Mingyu. Third senior brother. Nodding to Dong Mingyu, Yu Haoran did not immediately introduce Gongsun Yiming and his sister. He planned to wait until everyone had arrived before doing so. Following Dong Mingyu's arrival, the remaining disciples of Qingyun Peak all arrived at Qingju Pavilion in the next minute or so. Moreover, 8th senior brother Lin Xian, who had just broken through to the martial Grandmaster realm and was trying his best to consolidate his realm, also appeared in front of Qingju Pavilion. Looking at the people who had arrived in front of Qingju Pavilion, without any arrangements, they automatically dispersed and took the initiative to protect Chu Zhongyu, who was breaking through to the martial king realm. Gong Sun Yiming felt touched and envious. This was because the subconscious actions of Yu Haoran and the others were enough to show how deep their relationship was and how much trust they had in each other. This kind of deep affection and trust was what Gong Sun Yiming had always wanted. 20 minutes later, as the momentum that had reached its peak gradually began to fall, Yu Haoran and the others who were guarding the Qingju Pavilion gathered together with relaxed expressions. Gong Sun Yiming, when did you arrive? Seeing Gong Sun Yiming and his sister standing beside Yu Haoran, Wu Jingjun asked happily. Among the 10 disciples of Qingyun Peak, Wu Jingjun not only knew Gong Sun Yiming, but also knew the reason why Gong Sun Yiming appeared at Qingyun Peak. Senior Brother Wu, do you want to ask me about the time I arrived at the 100 Qi Gate or the time I entered the Qingyun Peak? The 10 disciples of Qingyun Peak were able to protect their eldest senior brother without any instructions, which showed that they had a deep relationship with each other. However, at the trial peak, when Yu Haoran was restricted by Zhao Sinyu's special celestial device and secret method of transformation, none of the disciples of Qingyun Peak appeared. This could only mean that they were either cultivating in seclusion at that time or were delayed by other things. Therefore, Gong Sun Yiming planned to go through Wu Jingjuan's interrogation and tell the senior brothers what happened at the bottom of the trial peak in detail. In this way, he could increase his position in Yu Haoran's mind and also hope that with Yu Haoran's help, he could integrate into the Qingyun Peak as soon as possible. Hearing Gong Sun Yiming's 2 questions, Wu Jingjun was slightly stunned. Then he remembered Gong Sun Yiming's identity and quickly asked, Junior brother Gong Sun, what happened? Senior brother Wu, senior brothers, it's like this? After that, Gong Sun Yiming recounted everything that had happened after he had arrived at the trial peak. He did not omit anything at all. Gong Sun Yiming also interjected from time to time, telling them how she felt at that time. 9th junior brother, I don't mean to scold you. After hearing Gong Sun Yiming's detailed description, Lu Guangwei and the others suddenly felt very guilty. In fact, the trial peak and Qingyun Peak were not too far apart, less than 100 miles away. At such a close distance, after such a fierce fight, they did not immediately use their divine thoughts to check, which meant that they did not pay attention to Yu Haoran at all. However, at the same time, Lu Guangwei, who was the oldest and had the highest status, could not help but criticize. You once said that the reason why Qingyun Peak could be feared by the other sects was that we were a whole. No matter what difficulties we faced, we always advanced and retreated together. But what about you? Lu Guangwei raised his hand and pointed at Yu Haoran, questioning him. Raging against the achievement hall, killing your way up to the law enforcement peak alone, and going against the sect leader. Have you ever considered your own safety before doing such dangerous things? Have you ever thought about what you're doing by yourself? Have you ever thought about what you're doing to us? In the future, we can still shamelessly accept your selfless gifts and have the nerve to go out and say that we are Yu Haoran's senior brothers. Second senior brother, don't be angry. It happened so suddenly that junior brother Gongsun and the others were in danger, so I did not have time to inform you. Whether it was in his previous life or this life, this was the first time that he had seen the mild-tempered second senior brother get angry, so Yu Haoran hurriedly apologized and patted his chest. Second senior brother, don't worry. If something like this happens again in the future, I will definitely inform you first, and then the entire Qingyun faction will move out to show the unity and strength of our faction. Ninth junior brother, remember your promise today. Yu Haoran's obedient attitude made Lu Guangwei's anger dissipate, and his attitude became much more peaceful. By the way, senior brothers, Let me introduce them to you. Seeing that his second senior brother had finally calmed down and that his third senior brother, who was the strongest among them, was about to continue lecturing him, Yu Haoran quickly changed the topic. This handsome, confident, and imposing young man is called Gong Sun Yiming. He was originally the most talented person in the younger generation of the ancient Town sect, and also the strongest in the martial warrior realm. Pointing at Gong Sun Yiming, Yu Haoran praised him vigorously. Because of various reasons, and because I tried my best to rope him in, junior brother Gongsun has now become a disciple of our Qingyun faction. At this point, Yu Haoran pointed at Gongsun Yuding and continued the introduction. This beautiful girl is called Gongsun Yuding, and she is junior brother Gongsuan's younger sister. Now, she is also a disciple of our Qingyun faction. Moreover, Gongsun Yiming and Gongsun Yuding have already met Master and have officially become his disciples. Gongsun Yiming greets all senior brothers. Gongsun Yuding greets all senior brothers. After hearing Yu Haoran's introduction, Gongsun Yiming and Gongsun Yuding hurriedly bowed. Junior brother Gongsun and junior sister Gongsuan's matter was too sudden, and I didn't prepare any greeting gifts. I will definitely make it up to you the next time we meet. Hearing that Gongsun Yiming and Gongsun Yuding had already become disciples, Lu Guangwei was overjoyed. However, when he thought about how he didn't prepare anything as a senior brother, he suddenly felt a little embarrassed. Second senior brother, you can't treat them differently. Seeing his second senior brother's embarrassed look, Yu Haoran thought about how he was ridiculed for no reason just now. Suddenly, he had the thought of teasing him and hurriedly complained. When junior brother Wu and I became disciples, second senior brother didn't even mention a greeting gift, let alone give us one. Chapter 355. Qingyun Peak, in front of Qingju Pavilion. I forgot about it. Lu Guangwei did not know how to respond to Yu Haoran's teasing. He could only express his apology with a guilty expression. That's enough, ninth junior brother. Don't joke with second senior brother. After a few months of contact, everyone present knew Yu Haoran's character. They knew that his complaint just now was just a joke. Only second senior brother, who was more straightforward and didn't know how to be flexible, would be fooled. Therefore, Huang Zonghua took the initiative to step forward. He patted Yu Haoran's shoulder to stop him from teasing them and turned to Gongsun Yiming and his sister. Junior brother Yiming, junior sister Yuding, don't listen to ninth junior brother's complaints. Qingyun Peak has never had the custom of giving a greeting gift. The reason second senior brother lost his composure just now was because you and your sister joined us. Qingyun Peak has become more prosperous. He was so excited that he couldn't help but lose his composure. Fifth senior brother, it's okay. Hearing Huang Zonghua's explanation, Gongsun Yiming quickly waved his hand, indicating that he did not misunderstand and did not care about the greeting gift. Come in. Just as Huang Zonghua was explaining that Yu Haoran's complaints were just teasing them, Chu Zhongyu's calm voice came from Qingju Pavilion. Let's go. Second senior brother signaled and stepped into Qingju Pavilion. After breaking through to the martial king realm, Chu Zhongyu did not stay in the cultivation room to consolidate his cultivation. Instead, he sat in the pavilion and looked at the people entering the courtyard with a smile. Although the overall change was not big, Yu Haoran found that Chu Zhongyu's aura was more restrained. He knew that his breakthrough this time was not just a breakthrough to the martial king realm. You must be 11th junior brother Gongsun Yiming and 12th junior sister Gongsun Yuding, whom Master has just accepted. Chu Zhongyu asked with a smile before Yu Haoran could introduce them. Gongsun Yiming greets eldest senior brother. Gongsun Yuding greets eldest senior brother. Gongsun Yiming and Gongsun Yuding hurriedly saluted when they saw Chu Zhongyu directly questioning them. Although I've never heard of junior sister Gongsuan's name, I've heard of junior brother Gongsuan's great name. As Chu Zhongyu, who was in charge of the affairs of Qingyun Peak, he often dealt with people from the outside world. How could he not have heard of a top genius like Gong Sun Yiming? Compared to Yu Shixiang, junior brother's aptitude is far inferior, Gong Sun Yiming hurriedly said modestly in response to Chu Zhongyu's praise. Don't compare yourself to him. Your ninth senior brother is no longer human. It's not surprising that he's a monster now, Chu Zhongyu said helplessly. Although the other disciples of Qingyun Peak didn't pay attention to the conflict on the trial peak, as the eldest senior brother of Qingyun Peak, Chu Zhongyu understood and was familiar with Yu Haoren's personality. How could he not pay attention? Therefore, when he saw Zhao Xinyu use a magic weapon to restrict Yu Haoren from transforming into a strange beast to deal with the current predicament, Chu Zhongyu's first reaction was to go and help. However, he was at a crucial moment in his soul's transformation. If he forcefully stopped his soul's transformation, not only would he suffer the backlash of failing to break through, but his soul would also lose the opportunity to transform and would forever remain at the peak of 9th grade martial ancestor realm. Therefore, he could only use pills to increase the speed of his soul's transformation while constantly paying attention to the conflict. When Yu Haoren continuously revealed that he had broken through to the martial master realm and finally reached the middle of 5th grade martial master, Chu Zhongyu was so shocked that he almost went crazy. This was because he was the same as most people. He had never seen or heard of anyone who could break through 5 small realms in a row while breaking through to the martial master realm, crossing over 22 small realms. Fortunately, the martial king realm that was breaking through was also increasing his mental cultivation while increasing his strength. This allowed him to calmly accept Yu Haoren's breakthrough of 5 small realms. However, when he saw Yu Haoren transform into a large power King Kong ape and use the staff technique that made him feel fear, his heart was like raging waves as he directly stopped his breakthrough. Fortunately, the transformation of his soul had already ended. Temporarily stopping his breakthrough didn't have much of an impact on him. At that time, he had planned to temporarily stop his breakthrough and directly go to the trial peak. Firstly, he was worried that using such a terrifying staff technique would cause his 9th junior brother to suffer the backlash of using strength that was above his level. Secondly, he also wanted to help Yu Haoren clean up the aftermath. However, just as he was about to leave the pavilion, his master's voice suddenly sounded in his mind. His master told him to focus on breaking through and not pay attention to anything related to Yu Haoren. This was also why when Yu Haoren brought the Gongsun siblings to the pavilion, they happened to meet him in the middle of his breakthrough. Thinking about how Yu Haoren was able to raise his cultivation by 5 small realms in one go when he broke through. Thinking about how when he transformed into a large power King Kong ape, he was able to directly tear through the void with his staff technique. At the same time, Chu Zhongyu felt rather helpless, and at the same time, he didn't know what to say to him. Therefore, he could only place his attention on the Gong Sun Yiming siblings. Eldest senior brother, I brought junior brother Yiming and junior sister Yuding to see you. There's something I need to trouble you with. After that, Yu Haoren told Chu Zhongyu about how to arrange for Gong Sun Yiming and his sister. 9th junior brother, I will take care of these matters. Nodding his head, Chu Zhongyu thought for a moment, then instructed. In the future, you don't have to pay attention to all the chores of the peak. You just have to follow your own thoughts and do whatever you want. Through the conflict at the bottom of the trial peak, as well as Yu Haoren's various monstrous performances, Chu Zhongyu knew that Qingyun Peak could no longer give him any help or guidance for a genius like Yu Haoren, who possessed top-notch monstrous aptitude. The only thing he could do now was to not let the troublesome chores of the peak affect his cultivation, so that he could completely follow his own wishes and cultivate however he wanted. This was also the advice his master had given him when he broke through to the martial king realm. Nodding his head, Yu Haoren indicated that he understood, then pointed at Gongsun Yuding and said, "Eldest senior brother, I understand. Eldest senior brother, although I have never practiced the art of fate divination, I still have some experience in judging people. I see that junior sister Yuding's bones are clear and her body is light and graceful. Her talent and potential must be very outstanding. Today just so happens to be the day that junior sister Yuding comes of age. Why don't we test her aptitude on the spot?" Although Gongsun Yuding had made a name for herself in her previous life, after her rebirth, many things in her previous life had deviated from their original path. Yu Haoran was worried that Gongsun Yuding might have some unforeseen circumstances, so he wanted to witness her aptitude test with his own eyes. "Sure." Nodding his head, Chu Zhongyu directly took out a talent stone and handed it to Gongsun Yuding. "Junior sister Yuding, you only need to drip a drop of blood on the talent stone. The color of your talent, potential, comprehension, and perseverance will be clearly displayed. According to the grade of your aptitude, I can also arrange for your future cultivation." Nodding her head heavily, Gongsun Yuding took the talent stone, then bit her finger and dripped a drop of blood on the talent stone. Just as the blood entered the talent stone, 2 rays of white light that represented her talent, potential, comprehension, and perseverance instantly appeared. Other than Yu Haoran, who knew about Gongsun Yuding's physique beforehand, the speed of the white light's appearance shocked everyone present. Chapter 356. Qinyun Peak, Qingzhou Pavilion. In just 3 seconds, the white light from the talent stone in Gongsun Yuding's hand reached its limit and was quickly replaced by a yellow light. At the same time, the yellow light reached its limit and was quickly replaced by an orange light. Although the orange light reached its limit slightly slower than the other 2 colors, it was only 1 second slower before it was completely replaced by a green light. At this moment, Chu Zhongyu, who had been sitting on the stone chair in the pavilion, stood up and stared at Gongsun Yuding. 5 seconds later, the green light also reached its limit and was quickly replaced by a red light. At this moment, the change in the red light's color began to slow down. However, based on the speed at which the color changed, everyone present knew that the red light was not the limit. In other words, Gongsun Yuding's talent was far beyond the peak of the martial saint realm. She had far surpassed everyone present except for Yu Haoran. 10 seconds later, a blue light quickly appeared in the red light that had reached its limit. Although the speed at which the blue light increased was also slower than the red light, based on the speed at which the color increased, the blue light was also not Gongsun Yuding's limit. When the 2 blue lights that represented talent, potential, comprehension, and perseverance reached their limits and a purple light appeared in the middle, even Yu Haoran could not help but breathe heavily and his expression gradually became excited. Although his rebirth had caused many things in his previous life to deviate from their original path, it now seemed that Gongsun Yuding was not affected in any way for the time being. This made him feel much more at ease. When the blue light reached its limit, a purple light slowly appeared in the blue light. Although the amount and speed at which the purple light appeared was not as fast as the previous few colors, as long as the purple light appeared, it meant that Gongsun Yuding already had the talent of a demon. She had the potential to become a powerful cultivator like Emperor Wu. The light that represented talent, potential, comprehension, and perseverance finally stopped at the light purple light. "Good, very good, this is great." If it were not for the fact that Gongsun Yuding was a girl, Chu Zhongyu would have been so excited that he would have directly picked her up. Therefore, he, who was unable to vent the excitement in his heart, could only say "good" repeatedly. As for her biological brother, after seeing his sister's monstrous talent, he was also so excited that he couldn't speak. He could only walk back and forth. Immortal bone. After the conflict on the trial peak, Thaling, who knew that Yu Haoran wouldn't encounter any trouble in the near future, had been sitting cross-legged on the jade bed at the top of the victor's peak. With the help of the unique aura emitted by the jade bed, he was healing the injuries to his soul. However, when Yuhaoran's sea of consciousness suddenly emitted a purple light and a trace of the aura of a special constitution that he was familiar with, he woke up from his recovery state. Thaling could not help but yell when he saw the light purple glow from the talent stone in Gongsun Yuding's hand, as well as the jade bone that was illuminated by the light purple glow. Thaling, what is an immortal bone? Hearing Thaling yell out the two words immortal bone, Yuhaoran carefully thought for a moment. He realized that he had never heard of the two words immortal bone in his previous life, and hurriedly asked, Yuhaoran, this little girl called Gongsun Yuding has great talent and potential. You must win her over. It would be best if she could become your life partner. Without answering Yuhaoran's question, Thaling suggested that Yuhaoran pursue Gongsun Yuding and make her his woman. Thaling, you can advise me on anything, but when it comes to matters of the heart, I hope that you can follow 3 points of view. Don't ask, don't say, and don't care. Take the initiative to pursue Gongsun Yuding and make her his woman. Thaling's suggestion just now had directly touched the part of Yuhaoran's heart that he didn't want to touch the most. This caused him to angrily reprimand Thaling, which was rare for him. Okay, I didn't say anything about my suggestion just now. Seeing that Yuhaoran was really angry, Thaling knew that he had touched his bottom line. While hurriedly admitting his mistake, he also began to explain the specific origin of the immortal bone. The immortal bone is actually the name of a special body constitution. This body constitution is ranked 7th among the thousands of body constitutions. It is even 1 rank higher than the special body constitution that your sister Yusiki has. Warriors with the special body constitution of the immortal bone not only absorb spiritual energy hundreds of times faster than ordinary warriors, but the special structure of the immortal bone can also increase the warrior's comprehension, allowing them to better understand the realm and increase their cultivation faster. At this point, Thaling took a deep breath and continued to explain with a tone of envy and jealousy. When warriors with the immortal bone constitution break through to the martial saint realm, they will understand a special power of law. This power of law is called the law of control. The law of control is not only ranked in the top 100 among the thousands of laws, but through the law of control, one can further understand the ultimate law. Yuhaoran, if you can understand the law of control and the ultimate law, and completely merge the 2 types of power of law, you will eventually form the power of absolute control. Although the power of absolute control is not among the thousands of laws, the power of this power of law is not inferior to the power of law that is ranked in the top 10. Thaling, that's not right. Although Yuhaoran was very shocked by Thaling's explanation of the immortal bone, it was completely different from what he had understood in his previous life. In his previous life, Gongsun Yuding was able to shake the entire Tianxian continent because of the special body constitution that she possessed. According to what he had understood at that time, the special body constitution that Gongsun Yuding possessed was not the immortal bone, but the clear spirit constitution that was ranked 20th among the thousands of special body constitutions. Why did the clear spirit constitution in his previous life become the immortal bone in this life? Therefore, Yuhaoran directly told Thaling the question in his heart. This is very normal. After hearing Yuhaoran's question, Thaling explained without a trace of surprise. Because the characteristics of the clear spirit physique are very similar to the characteristics of the celestial bone, unless it's someone like me who has seen the celestial bone physique, anyone would mistake the special physique of this little girl as the clear spirit physique. I see. Thaling's explanation solved Yuhaoran's question, and at the same time, he could not help but feel excited. With the immortal bone constitution that was ranked 7th among the thousands of special body constitutions, Gongsun Yuding's future was limitless. He was extremely lucky to be able to take her into Qinyun Peak in advance before she started to cultivate. Next, as long as he specially trained Gongsun Yuding, he would have another capable assistant on his journey in the future. Thaling, I wonder if you have a cultivation method that specifically targets the immortal bone constitution? Chapter 357. Qingyun Peak, Qingju Pavilion. Coincidentally, one of the partners of the peerless master I followed in my previous life happened to have the immortal bone physique. In fact, even if Yu Haoran did not take the initiative to ask, Thaling would have taken out a cultivation method suitable for the immortal bone physique. Through Yu Haoran's guidance, he would have vigorously cultivated Gongsun Yuding. After all, with the immortal bone physique, Gongsun Yuding's future achievements would be amazing. Of course, Thaling had his own reasons for selfless contributions and vigorous cultivation. He just did not want to let Yu Haoran know about it for the time being. Really? Yu Haoran asked in surprise. In his previous life, he had collected a lot of top-notch mental cultivation method. Among them, there was no lack of peak earth rank or mid-heaven rank mental cultivation method. However, these mental cultivation methods either focused on strength or had high requirements for courage. They were not suitable for the delicate Gongsun Yuding. Therefore, when he asked just now, he only hoped that Thaling would be able to take out a cultivation method suitable for Gongsun Yuding. He never thought about whether there was a cultivation method suitable for the immortal bone physique. That's right. Nodding, Thaling condensed the cultivation method and martial technique directly into Yu Haoran's mind. At the same time, Thaling introduced the origin of this cultivation method in detail. Yu Haoran, this mental cultivation method is called the Nine Heavens Mystic Mental Cultivation Method. It was created by the expert I followed back then. Based on the uniqueness of the immortal bone physique, his powerful cultivation base, and tens of thousands of years of life experience, he finally created the most suitable cultivation method for the immortal bone physique. Thaling, the grade of the Nine Heavens Xianyuan cultivation method? To be able to make Thaling follow a peerless master for tens of thousands of years, his cultivation must have surpassed the realm of Emperor Wu. It was very likely that he was a peerless master who had reached the martial god realm. Yu Haoran wanted to know the grade of the cultivation method created by a peerless expert in the martial god realm for his beloved partner. Surpassing the heaven rank. Even among the deity rank techniques, it is one of the top techniques. Thaling replied with a hint of arrogance. When Yu Haoran heard that the Nine Heavens Mystic Heart technique had surpassed the heaven rank and reached the divine rank, he couldn't help but gasp. He couldn't help guessing. Since she had a heaven-defying immortal bone physique, and such a powerful mental cultivation method and martial skill, it was unknown what realm the beloved partner of that peerless expert had reached in the end. Fortunately, Thaling's next answer solved his conjecture. With the help of the Nine Heavens Mystic Heart technique, that expert's life partner eventually became a martial god expert. Moreover, she was also one of the top experts in the martial god realm. It's a pity. Thinking about how that peerless expert and his partners, whose strength was not inferior to his, had finally died on the battlefield when they were besieged by enemies dozens or even hundreds of times their strength, Thaling's heart was filled with sadness. If the expert he followed had listened to his advice and started to cultivate his own team early on, then he would not have had to fight alone when he was besieged by enemies hundreds of times their strength. In the end, he would not have died on the battlefield. This was also why he was willing to help Wu Jingjun and Gongsun Yuding. It was because he wanted to prevent Yu Haoran from repeating the same mistake. Ignoring Thaling's sadness, Yu Haoran paid more attention to the first half of his sentence. With the immortal bone physique and the Ninth Heaven Mystic Heart Sutra, not only could she reach the martial god realm, but she would also be one of the top experts in the martial god realm. Was it appropriate for him to impart such a powerful mental cultivation method to Gongsun Yuding? Carefully recalling the various rumors about Gongsun Yuding in his previous life, Yu Haoran finally decided to be careful. At first, he would only impart the 9th Heaven Mystic Heart Sutra to her before she reached the martial emperor realm. As for the remaining levels, he would decide whether to continue imparting them to her based on her cultivation progress, her trust in him, and her sense of belonging to Qingyun Peak. He told Thaling his thoughts just now, and Thaling was also very much in favor of his approach. After all, one should not have the heart to harm others, but one should always have the heart to guard against others. 9th Junior Brother, it seems that you are a lucky star sent by the heavens to revitalize our Qingyun Peak. After the purple light on Gongsun Yuding's body had completely disappeared, Chu Zhongyu, who had slightly calmed down, sighed to Yu Haoran. Overturning the achievement hall, killing your way to Enforcer Peak alone, and dominating the secret territory trials. Not only did you greatly increase the prestige of Qingyun Peak, but you also brought us a large amount of cultivation resources. Now, not only have you recruited the famous junior brother Yiming into Qingyun Peak, but you have also brought junior sister Yuding, whose talent, potential, comprehension, and perseverance are not inferior to yours. Speaking up to this point, Chu Zhongyu bowed to Yu Haoran and thanked him with an excited expression. 9th Junior Brother, I represent the ancestors of Qingyun Peak to thank you. 9th Junior Brother, I also represent Master to thank you. Lu Guangwei, who was also excited, quickly bowed to thank him. Eldest Senior Brother, 2nd Senior Brother. Dodging Chu Zhongyu and Lu Guangwei's bow, Yu Haoran said with a firm expression. Since I, Yu Haoran, stepped onto Qingyun Peak and became Master's disciple, Qingyun Peak has been my home, and Master is my father, Yu Haoran. For the sake of my family, for the sake of my father, what you said just now is my duty and responsibility. You don't need to thank me at all. Well said. 8th Senior Brother Lin Xian, who had been silent all this while, couldn't help but exclaim loudly after hearing Yu Haoran's heartfelt statement. At the same time, he spoke heroically. 9th Junior Brother, Qingyun Peak is not only your home, but also mine and the other senior brothers and junior brothers' home. Our home, our father, we will protect it together. That's right, our home, our father, we will protect it together. Our home, we. 3rd Senior Brother Dong Mingyu, 4th Senior Brother Qing Yun, 5th Senior Brother Huang Zonghua, 6th Senior Brother Pan Yuhai, 7th Senior Brother Xiao Nan, Wu Jingjun, and even Gongsun Yiming and Gongsun Yuding, who had just entered the sect, could not help repeating Lin Xian's heroic words. Their eyes were full of determination. Eldest Senior Brother, according to junior sister Yuding's demonic constitution, I guess she is very likely to have a special constitution like Xingjun. After everyone calmed down a little, Yu Haoran walked to Gongsun Yuding and looked at Gongsun Yuding, who was almost at his ear, and said solemnly, So, I will be responsible for Yuding's cultivation in the future. Of course. Seeing that Yu Haoran was willing to take the initiative to teach Gongsun Yuding, Chu Zhongyu and the others were very supportive. Let's take Wu Jingjun as an example. When he entered Qingyun Peak, the talent and potential he displayed could only be considered as an ordinary top genius. However, after following Yu Haoran to cultivate, the progress of his cultivation and strength was not inferior to the top expert. This also showed that Haoran had his own unique methods and insights on how to cultivate geniuses with special constitutions. As for Gongsun Yiming, Yu Haoran was willing to sacrifice his cultivation time to personally guide his sister's cultivation. This made him extremely excited. Just how outstanding was Yu Haoran? The experience in the Blue Moon Secret Realm and the conflict at the bottom of the Trial Peak had already proved this point. Chapter 358. Qingyun Peak, Qingju Pavilion. Actually, Gongsun Yiming still harbored some selfish thoughts about Yu Haoran personally guiding his sister's cultivation. He hoped that through Yu Haoran's personal guidance, the two of them would be able to spend more time alone together and increase their mutual affection for each other. Their relationship would then rise to a higher level. It wasn't that Gong Sun Yiming had extravagant hopes of obtaining anything from Yu Haoran. Instead, it was because after knowing Yu Haoran for a period of time, he realized that Yu Haoran was a person who placed great importance on relationship. Just because of the friendship formed during the training in the mystic realm and his willingness to join Qingyun Peak, he didn't fear the sect leader of the 100 Qi Gate, Zhao Ji, whose cultivation had reached the martial emperor realm, and dared to fight with his life on the line. If his sister could become Yu Haoran's life partner, at least in the future, she wouldn't be bullied and he wouldn't have to worry about her safety. Now, the only thing that Gong Sun Yiming was a little worried about was Lin Mengyao and Kong Yong-ah, who had been by Yu Haoran's side when the training in the Blue Moon mystic realm was coming to an end. After all, those two girls also possessed peerless beauty that could cause the downfall of a city. They were peerless geniuses with outstanding talent and potential. However, Gong Sun Yiming sees that his sister is not less beautiful than Zhou Mengyao, and she is even a little more beautiful than Zhou Mengyao. Besides, Gong Sun Yiming just showed her great talent. As for Gong Sun Yuding, when she heard that her most beloved Yu Haoran, Yu Shixiang, was willing to personally guide her in her cultivation, her thoughts were like a running deer, causing her little heart to beat rapidly. Yuding, in a moment, second senior brother will take you to choose a courtyard that you like. After everything is arranged properly, go directly to the Hidden Moon Pavilion to see me. Since he had decided to guide Gong Sun Yuding in her future cultivation, Yu Haoran had to make some preparations in advance according to her immortal bone physique and monstrous aptitude. Yes, Yu Shixiang. Gong Sun Yuding replied obediently. Senior brothers, junior brother Yiming, I'll take my leave first. After saying goodbye to everyone present, Yu Haoran turned around and left the Qingju Pavilion. However, when he passed by Wu Jingjun, he said softly, Jingjun, follow me to the Hidden Moon Pavilion. After reuniting with Qingju Pavilion, Wu Jingjun noticed that Yu Haoran was paying more attention to his eldest senior brother and Gong Sun Yiming. He only nodded at Wu Jingjun to greet him. This made Wu Jingjun feel a sense of loss for not being valued. This sense of loss made him feel a little overwhelmed. Originally, he had wanted to wait until the gathering was over before going to meet Yu Haoran alone and tell him about the results of his cultivation and realm breakthrough. This way, he could prove that he was still his senior brother's best assistant. Now that he had heard Yu Haoran take the initiative to invite him, how could he not be happy? Therefore, in his excitement, Wu Jingjun forgot to say goodbye to everyone present. He hurriedly followed behind Yu Haoran and left the Qingju Pavilion. In the cultivation room of the Hidden Moon Pavilion, cultivation and the grade of your physical body, Yu Haoran asked directly as he gestured for Wu Jingjun to sit cross-legged in front of him. My cultivation is at the advanced stage of 3rd grade martial master. My physical body is at the peak of 3rd grade martial master. I have already finished consolidating them, Wu Jingjun replied truthfully. That's about what I expected. Hearing Wu Jingjun talk about the results of his breakthrough in the martial master realm, Yu Haoran only nodded and did not reveal the slightest bit of surprise. The experience in the Blue Moon secret realm had caused Wu Jingjun's cultivation and physical body to reach the limit. Furthermore, with the help of the feces of the exotic beasts and the cold yin qi of the yin spring, the yuan power in his dantian had been completely purified. In addition, the more the bloodthirsty special physique was activated, the more it could greatly increase his talent and potential. Therefore, Wu Jingjun being able to break through 3 small realms in his cultivation was not out of his expectations. The only thing that surprised Yu Haoran was the breakthrough in his physical body's grade. This was because according to his estimation, based on his own accumulation, Wu Jingjun's physical body would at most be at the peak of 2nd grade martial master. However, he did not expect that the breakthrough in his physical body would be an entire small realm higher than his estimation. Jingjun, during the breakthrough process, Were there any doubts or strange areas? Yu Haoran asked. There really was. Nodding his head, Wu Jingjun closed his eyes and directly mobilized his cultivation and physical body. When he broke through to the martial master realm, something had suddenly appeared in his body. Blood shield. Seeing the bright red circular shield that appeared in front of Wu Jingjun, Yu Haoran shouted in surprise. Following that, he asked excitedly, Jingjun, did you completely activate the bloodthirsty physique? I think so. Rubbing his head, Wu Jingjun said with some uncertainty. It's not I think so, I'm completely sure. Shaking his head with a smile, Yu Haoran explained. Among the thousands of special physiques, the bloodthirsty physique is the one that is best at attacking. However, how to ensure one's own safety while attacking? And this blood shield is a defensive secret technique condensed from your own blood essence when the bloodthirsty physique is completely activated. Its purpose is to solve the weakness of your body's defense when attacking. At this point, Yu Haoran placed his hand on the blood shield and carefully felt the power within it. He was very satisfied. Based on my judgment just now, the blood shield's defense is on par with a low-grade Zong realm magic weapon. Jingjun, in the future, as your cultivation continues to improve, the bloodthirsty physique will continue to evolve. Sooner or later, the blood shield in your body will advance to the King Realm, Emperor Realm, Saint Realm, Exalt Realm, and even an Emperor Realm magic weapon with its own consciousness. It's true. Hearing Yu Haoran's evaluation of the blood shield, Wu Jingjun asked in disbelief. It's even more true than spirit stones. Nodding his head, Yu Haoran replied with a smile. At the same time, he finally understood why Wu Jingjun's physical body could directly advance to the peak of third-grade martial master. It was probably closely related to the fact that he had completely activated the bloodthirsty physique. Yu Haoran, since Jingjun has completely activated the bloodthirsty physique, it's best to bring him along when we go deeper into the mountain range. Using the secret devouring technique to devour the flesh and blood of exotic beasts can not only increase his strength, but also further consolidate the bloodthirsty physique. This will lay the most solid foundation for him to advance to the bloodthirsty physique in the future. Just as Yu Haoran was lamenting the various changes the bloodthirsty physique had brought to Wu Jingjun, Thowling in his sea of consciousness suddenly suggested. I think so too. Yu Haoran agreed. Then, he continued to ask with concern. Jingjun, other than the blood shield formed after completely activating the bloodthirsty physique, do you have any other doubts? Shaking his head, Wu Jingjun indicated that he had no doubts for the time being. Closing his eyes, Yu Haoran thought carefully for a while, then opened his eyes and said, Jingjun, go back first. Come to the Hidden Moon Pavilion in the morning the day after tomorrow and accompany me to the depths of the mountain range. Then, use the exotic beasts in the depths of the mountain range to train. Firstly, consolidate our cultivation after breaking through and familiarize ourselves with the power after breaking through. Secondly, use the secret devouring technique to continue increasing our cultivation and strength, further increasing the power of your bloodthirsty physique. Yes, Yu Shixiang. Nodding his head heavily, Wu Jingjun stood up and left the cultivation room. After Wu Jingjun left the cultivation room, Yu Haoran asked in confusion. Pagoda spirit, according to my understanding, martial artists with special constitutions, after fully activating their special constitutions, will have their own constitutions and martial skills. Why didn't Jingjun obtain the martial skills after fully activating his bloodthirsty constitution? Chapter 359. Clear Cloud Peak, Hidden Moon Pavilion. Thowling, you can't be saying that the blood shield just now is a physique martial technique after the bloodthirsty physique has been fully activated, right? Hearing Thowling's rhetorical tone, Yu Haoran immediately guessed the blood shield that Wu Jingjun had just displayed. But through the touch just now, he discovered that the blood shield only had a relatively strong defensive ability. It should be considered a secret technique of a special physique, and not a physique martial technique that could multiply one's strength. Yu Haoran, the blood shield that Wu Xingjun displayed just now is not only a defensive secret technique, but also a physique martial technique that defies the natural order. Thowling said in a serious tone as he recalled the physique martial technique that the blood demon old man had once displayed. The blood shield can be real or fake, big or small. It can be used for defense when it is real, and it can be turned into a sea of blood when it is fake. Thowling, what did you mean just now? It can be used for defense when it is real, and it can be turned into a sea of blood when it is fake. These two mysterious sentences caused Yu Haoran to be completely confused. Yu Haoran, the blood demon supremacy of ancient times, was able to shake the world and cause his enemies to subconsciously run for their lives when they heard the two words blood demon. In addition to his devouring technique, he also had a unique physique martial technique after the bloodthirsty physique and the bloodthirsty physique have been fully activated. And the name of this physique martial technique is called the blood demon technique. The blood demon technique has a total of 7 moves. The first move is remote devouring, which means that there is no need for any physical contact to directly extract the opponent's blood. The last move is boundless sea of blood, which means that the entire person can turn into a sea of blood and directly put the opponent into the sea of blood. Then, with the power of the sea of blood, it can devour and refine the opponent alive. Whether it is the first move, remote devouring, or the last move, blood devouring the world, the link used is the blood shield. Therefore, the blood shield is not only a defensive secret technique, but also a physique martial technique that can multiply one's strength. I see. Thowling's detailed explanation allowed Yu Haoran to finally understand the specific effects of the blood shield. At the same time, he felt happy for Wu Xingjun from the bottom of his heart. According to what Thowling had just said, Wu Xingjun, who had the blood shield, only needed to continue increasing the power of his bloodthirsty physique. In the future, he would be able to obtain the best defensive equipment and the strongest physique martial arts. Of course, with Wu Xingjun's current reliance on him, the stronger Wu Xingjun was, the more help he would be to him. Since Wu Xingjun had no problems for the time being, Yu Haoran began to consider how to guide Gongsun Yuding in her cultivation. Although he already had a preliminary plan in his heart, he was more interested in listening to the experienced Thowling of the immortal bone physique that he was very familiar with. She wanted to see if he had any better ideas for Gongsun Yuding's cultivation. Yu Haoran, actually, the guidance for Gongsun Yuding's cultivation is very simple. Thowling said in a relaxed tone when he heard Yu Haoran's inquiry on how to guide Gongsun Yuding in her upcoming cultivation. The immortal bone physique absorbs the spirit qi of heaven and earth hundreds of times faster than ordinary warriors. Their comprehension of realms is also thousands of times faster than ordinary warriors. Therefore, you can help her complete her first cultivation. In the future, you only need to provide a large amount of spirit stones and elixirs, and you can let her cultivate on her own. After hearing Thowling's suggestion, Yu Haoran asked in disbelief, "So simple?" Originally, according to his thoughts, since Gongsun Yuding had the immortal bone physique, which was ranked 7th among the tens of thousands of unique physiques, then he absolutely could not waste this opportunity. Therefore, he planned to use more rigorous training than Wu Xingjun to ask of her. Now, after hearing Thowling's guidance, how could he not be surprised and puzzled? That's right. Thowling continued, ignoring Yu Haoran's fuss. In my previous life, ever since the peerless powerhouse I once followed created the 9 Heavens mystic heart technique, he never asked about his partner's cultivation. He only took her out to train when he had nothing to do, to improve her state of mind and expand her life experience. It was under such a state of complete abandonment that his partner successfully comprehended the law of control in less than 10 years and advanced to the martial sage realm. In the end, she became a powerhouse in the martial god realm in 100 years. At this point, Thaling revealed a conspiratorial smile and advised. Therefore, if you want Gongsun Yuding's cultivation to improve quickly, it's best to take her out to train when you provide a large amount of spirit stones and elixirs to assist her in her cultivation. This can improve her state of mind and experience. I understand. Although Yu Haoran maintained a doubtful attitude towards Thaling's suggestion, he considered that he was unfamiliar with the immortal bone physique. Therefore, he decided to follow Thaling's suggestion and let Gongsun Yuding cultivate for a period of time. If her cultivation progress was as fast as Thaling said, then he would follow Thaling's suggestion in the future and adopt a laissez-faire attitude towards Gongsun Yuding. Since he had already determined Gongsun Yuding's future cultivation plan, Yu Haoran got up and left the cultivation room. Then, he went straight to the Hall of Merit. This was because in the Blue Moon secret realm, he had promised Gongsun Yiming that he would give Gongsun Yuding a foundation establishment pill at the beginning of her cultivation. This would allow Gongsun Yuding to enter the martial disciple realm in the most perfect state. Now, even if he didn't have that promise, he still had to refine the foundation establishment pill in advance. His goal was to not waste Gongsun Yuding's monstrous talent and the special physique of the immortal bone. Since Clear Cloud Peak did not have the Earth's core fire, he could only borrow the alchemy room that was rented out by the Hall of Merit. Fortunately, the foundation establishment pill that he was preparing to refine this time did not require too many medicinal ingredients. The refining process would not take too long. Therefore, after leaving the Hidden Moon Pavilion, he did not inform Gongsun Yuding. Instead, he left Clear Cloud Peak and went straight to the Hall of Merit. To a disciple of the Hall of Merit, it was fine if you didn't know who the sect leader of the 100 Chi Gate was, and it was fine if you didn't know who the new Hall Master of the Hall of Merit was. However, you couldn't not know who Yu Haoran was. If you didn't know who Yu Haoran was and unintentionally offended him, then not only would you suffer, you might also implicate the Hall of Merit behind you. Therefore, when Yu Haoran entered the Hall of Merit and expressed that he was prepared to rent an alchemy room that could be used to refine pills, not only did the person in charge of the Hall of Merit not charge any rental fee, he even took out the best alchemy room in the Hall of Merit. Furthermore, a martial ancestor realm deacon personally led Yu Haoran there. Yu Haoran's reaction to the Hall of Merit's special treatment was very calm. He did not reveal the slightest bit of surprise and could only silently follow behind the deacon who led the way to the alchemy room on the east side of the Hall of Merit. However, just as he was about to reach the alchemy room that was used to refine pills, he unexpectedly heard the sound of an argument. From the sound of the argument, Yu Haoran sensed that one of the parties in the argument was someone he was familiar with. "Deacon Xia, please wait a moment." Chapter 360. Achievement Hall, in front of the alchemy room. Senior Jian, why is it that every time I see you, you are always arguing with the disciples of the Achievement Hall? There was no need for Yu Haoran to squeeze through the crowd. The Achievement Hall's attendant Xia, who was in charge of leading the way, used his martial ancestor realm aura to forcefully disperse the crowd. This allowed Yu Haoran to reach the center of the crowd without any obstructions. Yu Haoran teased a youth in front of him. He wore a green gown and held a sharp sword in his hand. "So it's Junior Yu." Hearing someone teasing him, the gloomy sword without trace immediately turned his head to look. He discovered that the person who teased him was actually Yu Haoran, who had taken the initiative to help him out 2 months ago. His gloomy expression eased a lot. "Senior brother Jian, what happened?" Thinking about how Sword Without Trace's left hand was tightly gripping the hilt of his sword, as if he was ready to attack at any time, Yu Haoran knew that he must have suffered a great humiliation. Otherwise, with his excited state alone, he would not have dared to be at daggers drawn in front of the Achievement Hall's alchemy room. "Junior Yu, please be the judge." Thinking about how Yu Haoran had helped him last time and how careful and cautious he had been, Sword Without Trace's heart was suddenly filled with hope. He hurriedly recounted his experiences and the unfair treatment he had received. It turned out that Jian Wuhan had used the corpse of the 7th-rank 3rd-rank Wolf King to exchange for cultivation resources. His cultivation had smoothly broken through to the 7th-rank Martial Master. Furthermore, he had reached the peak of the 7th-rank Martial Master in a very short period of time. In the following 2 months, he left the 100 Qi Gate and went to a dangerous place called the Broken Cliff to train. Although he was able to raise his cultivation to the peak of the 9th-grade Martial Master in a short time through the Broken Cliff, he was unexpectedly poisoned by a very special poison when he was preparing to break through to the Martial Ancestor realm. This special poison was called the Three-Tailed Scorpion Grass. It was a type of poisonous grass that looked like a poisonous scorpion but had 3 thin branches from its root. Not only was the three-tailed scorpion grass very small, but it also liked to live in the weeds. While it was extremely difficult to be discovered, it was also very easy to accidentally injure others. The poison contained in the three-tailed scorpion heart grass was not fatal, but it specialized in corroding the essence energy in a martial artist's dantian, as well as the demonic energy within a mutated beast's body. Of course, the three-tailed scorpion heart grass's speed of corroding essence energy is not fast. You only need to recuperate for around half a year and wait for the three-tailed scorpion heart grass's poison to be automatically consumed before everything will return to normal. However, for the Sword Without Trace, the cruel reality forced him to seize every minute and every second to improve his cultivation and strength. It was impossible for him to rest quietly for half a year. Furthermore, after experiencing the trials at the Duanya Perilous Land, his cultivation had already reached the limit of breaking through to the Martial Ancestor realm. He was even more unwilling to wait any longer. Therefore, relying on his valiant strength, after killing many powerful mutated beasts and collecting many precious spiritual herbs, he exchanged them for a top-notch detoxification pill from the Achievement Hall. He planned to use the detoxification pill to neutralize the poison of the three-tailed scorpion heartgrass. However, not only did the detoxification pill fail to neutralize the poison of the three-tailed scorpion heartgrass, the medicinal effect of the detoxification pill further increased the poison of the three-tailed scorpion heartgrass, causing the essence energy in his dantian to be corroded even faster. At this moment, he was already unable to maintain his cultivation at the peak of a 9th-grade martial master. This was also the main reason why he had a conflict with the Achievement Hall. What is the name of the detoxification pill that was exchanged for Senior Jian? After listening to the Sword Without Trace's explanation, Yu Haoran turned his head and asked the Achievement Hall disciple who was in charge of the pill room. Replying to Yu Shixiang, it is an 8th-grade 9th-grade detoxification pill. The Achievement Hall disciple who was in charge of the pill room replied respectfully. Senior Jian, it seems that you have misunderstood the Achievement Hall. After hearing that the detoxification pill that the Sword Without Trace had exchanged for was actually the detoxification pill, Yu Haoran smiled and explained on behalf of the Achievement Hall. Junior Yu, what do you mean by this? Seeing that Yu Haoran was actually siding with the Achievement Hall, the Sword Without Trace, who was originally gentle, questioned him with a gloomy expression. Senior Jian, please don't misunderstand. Waving his hand, Yu Haoran indicated that he was not siding with the Achievement Hall. Then, he explained in detail. Although the detoxification pill can neutralize most poisons, there are only 5 types of poison. Not only does it have no detoxification effect, it will instead increase the power of these 5 types of poison. And the three-tailed scorpion heartgrass that Senior Jian was poisoned with is one of these 5 types of poison. If that's the case, why didn't you tell me this when I exchanged the detoxification pill? After hearing Yu Haoran's detailed explanation, The sword without trace's anger was directed at the Achievement Hall disciple who had exchanged the detoxification pill with him. I didn't know at all. In the face of the sword without trace's angry questioning, the Achievement Hall disciple had a long face and repeatedly said that he did not know. Senior Jian, there's no need to hold him responsible. Seeing that his left hand was gradually tightening its grip on the sword hilt, Yu Haoran knew that the sword without trace had mistakenly thought that the Achievement Hall disciple was trying to harm him and was about to teach him a lesson. He hurriedly stood in front of the Achievement Hall disciple and explained. Senior Jian, let's not talk about how he is just an ordinary disciple of the alchemy room. Even a Grandmaster alchemist would not know about the conflict between the detoxification pill and the three-tailed scorpion heart grass. Then what should I do now? Seeing that Yu Haoran had taken the initiative to stand in front of the Achievement Hall disciple, the sword without trace knew that he had nearly lost his mind due to his anger. After taking a deep breath and calming himself down, the sword without trace asked with a trembling voice and a trace of sobbing. Senior Jian, I came to the Achievement Hall this time to refine some detoxification pills. Yu Haoran could not help but frown when he saw that the sword without trace, who was already at the peak of 9th grade martial master and had gone through many hardships, was actually crying like a woman. However, when he thought of the sword without trace's current situation and the fact that he had the ability to break through to the martial ancestor realm but was unable to do so due to being poisoned, he reluctantly came into contact with the sword without trace and decided to help him one more time. Senior Jian, if you believe me, then wait for me outside the alchemy room for 2 hours. I will help you refine an detoxification pill for the three-tailed scorpion heartgrass. Junior Yu, could it be that you are a Grandmaster alchemist? In 2 hours, he would be able to refine an detoxification pill for the three-tailed scorpion heartgrass. After hearing Yu Haoran's suggestion, the sword without trace stared at him with wide eyes and asked with a face full of shock. Without directly answering the sword without trace's question, Yu Haoran only lightly laughed twice before turning his head to instruct the Achievement Hall disciple. Based on my understanding of the Achievement Hall, you definitely have the heart-devouring grass, bone-corroding flower. Yu Haoran listed out 9 types of poisonous medicinal ingredients in a row and ordered without any hesitation. I will give you 5 minutes to bring them to me. Hurry up and go. Seeing the Achievement Hall disciple standing there in a daze, Deacon Xia roared in a low voice. Yes. The Achievement Hall disciple was awakened by Deacon Xia's roar and hurriedly turned around and ran to the alchemy room. Deacon Xia, which alchemy room will I use to refine pills? After the Achievement Hall disciple turned around and left, Yu Haoran asked Deacon Xia. That one. Deacon Xia said as he pointed at a row of 10 rooms made of bluestone towers. Nodding his head, Yu Haoran walked straight to the alchemy room that Deacon Xia pointed out. He then pushed open the bluestone stone door and stepped into the alchemy room. Chapter 361. Achievement Palace Hall, Alchemy Room. Not bad. Through the Yuanli defense, Yu Haoran carefully felt the temperature in the alchemy room. He discovered that the temperature in the alchemy room was very suitable for the pills that he was refining. He could not help but feel happy. He stood at the entrance of the alchemy room and waited for a while. After the Achievement Palace Hall disciples brought the 9 medicinal ingredients needed to refine the antidote pill, Yu Haoran heavily closed the green stone door. After the green stone door was closed, the sword without trace stood in front of the green stone door in a flash. He then looked at Attendant Xia and the Achievement Palace Hall disciples with a vigilant expression. The meaning in his eyes was very clear. He suspected that they might disturb Yu Haoran's pill refining. There's nothing else here. You can all leave. Waving his hand at the Achievement Palace Hall disciples, Attendant Xia indicated for them to leave. He then walked to the opposite side of the sword without trace and closed his eyes. He also looked like he was waiting for Yuhauran to come out of seclusion. Time flowed like water. 2 hours passed in the blink of an eye. Yuhauran sat cross-legged in front of the alchemy furnace. Although his face was slightly pale, his spirit was very excited. After his rebirth, although he had lost his cultivation and soul of a peak 9th grade martial king, the alchemy skills that he had accumulated in his previous life had not decreased. He still maintained his excellent standards. In 2 hours, not only did he successfully refine 3 foundation establishment pills that were suitable for the initial stage of cultivation, he also refined 9 antidote pills. At the same time, he also refined a few pills that were suitable for raising the level of a martial master. Although he could continue to refine more pills with his current state and his stock of medicinal herbs, he could only temporarily end this round of pill refining because he was tied up with miscellaneous matters. With the help of a pill that could restore Yuanli, Yuhauran recovered the Yuanli that he had used to refine the pills. He then stood up and left the alchemy room. When he saw Attendant Xia standing guard outside the door, he was slightly stunned. Following that, his face revealed a relieved expression. Deacon Xia had been standing guard here all this time, not because he was worried about his own safety, but because he was worried that some ignorant fellows in the achievement hall might disturb his alchemy and incur his wrath, thus implicating the achievement hall. The reason he was guarding this place was to intimidate the disciples in his palace. "Senior Brother Jian, here you go." Yuhauran casually tossed the bottle containing the antidote to the sword without trace before taking out another bottle from his storage ear and tossing it to Deacon Xia. Regardless of whether it's the alchemy room or the medicinal ingredients used to refine the detoxification pills, they all belong to your merit hall. Therefore, these 5 detoxification pills can be considered as compensation. Reaching out to catch the pill bottle that Yuhauran threw over, Enforcer Xia looked at Yuhauran in a daze. He did not expect that Yuhauran, who was secretly called the Butcher, was actually a reasonable person who could distinguish right from wrong. Reaching out to open the pill bottle, Deacon Xia poured out one of the pills and carefully observed it. Following that, he looked at Yuhauran with a face of shock. As the deacon of the Achievement Hall, Deacon Xia was mainly in charge of the alchemy room. Being in contact with pills for many years, he had a very deep understanding of the grade and quality of pills. The detoxification pill that Yuhauran threw over not only reached the 1st grade of the 7th grade, but its quality was also far superior to the pills refined by the sect's #1 alchemy grandmaster, Lai Yen. This meant that Yuhauran's alchemy cultivation had already reached the level of a alchemy grandmaster. In less than 3 months after joining the sect, his cultivation had consecutively broken through to the mid-5th grade of martial master. He also possessed the secret technique to transform into a 5th grade beast and was also proficient in refining pills. Looking at the 17-year-old Yuhauran in front of him, Deacon Xia was shocked and wanted to befriend him. However, he knew that his status was too low and his aptitude was too shallow. He did not have the qualifications to befriend Yuhauran. Therefore, he planned to wait until Yuhauran left before carefully discussing with the new hall master to see if he could resolve the conflict between Yuhauran and the Achievement Hall and establish a good relationship with him. "Junior Brother Yu, the 3-tailed scorpion heart medicine in my body has begun to weaken." After consuming the pill that Yuhauran had given him, the sword without trace had been carefully feeling the changes in his body. When he discovered that the 3-tailed scorpion heart poison in his body was no longer corroding his yuan power and had begun to weaken, he immediately shouted in surprise. "Senior Brother Sword, don't be happy too early." Yuhauran, who was very familiar with the 3-tailed scorpion heart medicine, knew that the weakening of the poison did not mean that the poison had disappeared. He was worried that the hot-tempered the sword without trace would choose to break through to the martial ancestor realm directly after sensing that his yuan power was no longer corroded by the three-tailed scorpion heart poison. In the end, he would suffer a backlash from the poison. Therefore, he hurriedly reminded him. Actually, the three-tailed scorpion heart medicine's poison has not completely disappeared. It still remains in your body. Therefore, it is not suitable for you to break through to the martial ancestor realm directly. You still need to rest for 3 to 5 days. I will remember. The sword without trace nodded heavily, indicating that he had remembered. Then, he formed a sword flower with one hand and used the highest etiquette of a swordsman to express his gratitude and solemnly promise. Junior brother, I, the sword without trace, owe you my life. In the future, if there is anything that you need me for, even if it is climbing a mountain of blades or diving into a sea of fire, I, the sword without trace, will not even frown. Senior brother sword, you are too serious. After being courteous, Howren directly said his goodbyes and turned to leave the achievement hall. Seeing Howren's back gradually disappear into the distance, the sword without trace stretched out his hand and touched his face. A trace of helplessness flashed across his eyes. When he returned to the hidden moon pavilion of the clear cloud peak, he happened to meet Gongsun Yuding, who was rushing over. After indicating for her to follow him into the cultivation room, Howren did not immediately give her the foundation establishment pill, nor did he guide her in her cultivation. Instead, he waited until her breathing had completely stabilized before speaking. Yuding, although your talent is extremely outstanding and you have the potential to become Emperor Wu, the path of cultivation is still against the heavens. The path of cultivation is filled with countless tribulations. If you are not careful, you may be consigned to eternal damnation. Therefore, if you want to overcome the various tribulations on the path of cultivation, there is only one way, and that is to work hard to raise your cultivation and strength. The higher your cultivation, the stronger your strength, and the stronger your ability to deal with the tribulations. You will also be able to live longer. Normally speaking, when instructing a disciple in their first cultivation lesson, they would usually talk about some things to pay attention to in the process of cultivation, as well as the glorious achievements of some of the sect's genius disciples. With this, they would encourage the new disciples to work hard in their cultivation. However, after experiencing numerous tribulations in his previous life, Howren, who understood the cruelty of this world, did not intend to do so. He wanted to tell Gongsun Yuding that if you want to live, you must work hard in your cultivation. If you want to live better, you must be ruthless to others and even more ruthless to yourself. Yu Shixiang, I will remember this. Nodding her head, Gongsun Yuding replied with a solemn expression. In fact, during her time living in the ancient town sect, because she lived in the Chores area, there were often new disciples who had just entered the sect. Therefore, she often heard some of the instructors of the ancient town sect when they were guiding the new disciples in their first cultivation. Originally, she thought that Howren would be like those instructors, rambling on and on about the same old dogma. She had already chosen to close her ears to avoid being tortured. However, what she did not expect was that Howren would actually talk about such a different and somewhat too serious topic. That's enough. Seeing Gongsun Yuding's overly serious expression, Howren knew that his words just now were too serious and hurriedly said to ease the atmosphere. Yuding, what I said just now was just to let you know the cruelty of this world. I hope you don't waste your outstanding talent. For you, for your brother, and for Qingyun Peak, you must work hard in your cultivation. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.